Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. They knew they absolutely couldn't allow the Nine Tails to reach Hidden Leaf Village's center, even if it meant burning through all of their chuckgrass. Seeing their determination, the elite Anbu members standing by also steeled themselves for what could be a fatal mission, rushing toward the Nine Tails location. A few minutes later, the Anbu responsible for notifying the higher-ups arrived at the 3rd Hokage's quarters. As soon as they entered, they saw the 3rd Hokage fully armored. The 3rd Hokage, who had been in a heated discussion with the 4th Hokage, hadn't slept at all. The moment he sensed the Nine Tails chakra, he immediately began preparing for battle. Gazing at the area where the Nine Tails was wreaking havoc, the 3rd Hokage glanced at the Anbu in front of him and said in a cold voice, "Minato must have sent you. I've already dispatched people to inform Denzo and the police force to search for the intruder, while also guiding villagers to the shelters. Now, are you going to help evacuate the villagers, or will you join me in confronting the Nine Tails?" With that, the 3rd Hokage stepped out the door, gripping the Monkey King transformed into his staff, and swiftly headed toward the Nine Tails. The Anbu exchanged glances before following the 3rd Hokage, using their actions to answer him without words. Chapter 152, The Night of the Nine Tails, Part 3. When the 3rd Hokage arrived at the battlefield outside the village, the Inoshikacho trio was nearly exhausted. With a loud bang, after expending most of their chakra, the 3 were violently thrown to the ground, blood seeping from the corners of their mouths. Although the 3 of them were elite jonin of Hidden Leaf Village, renowned even in the entire shinobi world, the Nine Tails was the strongest tailed beast, often regarded as a natural disaster. The fact they had held out for so long was already their limit. The surrounding Hidden Leaf Village shinobi were all injured, their eyes filled with despair. They didn't know how to fight back against a tailed beast of such catastrophic power and could only hope for the arrival of a hero. At that moment, a few Hidden Leaf Village shinobi noticed the 3rd Hokage in full battle armor, and hope instantly flickered in their eyes, raising their morale. The 3rd Hokage was considered the strongest Hokage. Though he may not have matched the combat prowess of the 1st Hokage, who pacified the Warring States period, he had been Hidden Leaf Village's steadfast protector for decades and was undoubtedly the village's anchor of stability. Under the watchful eyes of the Hidden Leaf Village shinobi, the 3rd Hokage did not disappoint. Leaping onto a high tower, he swung his staff, transformed by the Monkey King. With a powerful sweep, the massive staff struck the Nine Tails directly in the face. Boom! The Nine Tails staggered back dozens of meters. Recovering quickly, the Nine Tails, its beastly eyes filled with bloodlust, glared at the Hidden Leaf Village shinobi before once again lashing out with its 9 enormous tails. Chakra from the beast surged like waves, flooding the surrounding area. The Nine Tails didn't know why it had been freed from its Jinchuriki's seal or who had controlled its body, but at that moment, it only had one desire: revenge against Hidden Leaf Village. Having been imprisoned by the village for decades, it was finally time to unleash its wrath. Sensing the overwhelming, violent chakra of the Nine Tails, the faces of the Inoshikacho trio turned grim, and the other Hidden Leaf Village Anbu could barely stand under the pressure. The only one unaffected by the chakra was the 3rd Hokage, but even his expression was intensely serious. Given his current strength, if this were a battlefield, he could temporarily contend with the Nine Tails, even if he couldn't fully defeat it. He could whittle down the beast's chakra and, through the use of sealing jutsu, eventually suppress it. But this wasn't an open battlefield. Behind him lay the village of Hidden Leaf Village. He couldn't afford to rely on any strategies. The only option left was to fight the Nine Tails head-on, using his aging body to buy the younger generation of Hidden Leaf Village some time. Resolving himself to this, the 3rd Hokage fearlessly charged forward, launching another attack against the Nine Tails. A few kilometers away from the battlefield, at Hidden Leaf Village's orphanage, the ground shook with the distant tremors, waking the children from their sleep. Under the guidance of the headmistress, Nano Yakushi, the children began heading toward the shelter. As they moved, many of the orphans couldn't help but glance toward the direction of the village outskirts. Although they couldn't see what was happening, the flashes of lightning on the horizon made them keenly aware of the intensity of the battle, and they understood the gravity of the situation for Hidden Leaf Village. Among the children, only Kabuto Yakushi remained calm. His intuition told him that his mentor, Byakuya, must know something about what was happening. With this thought in mind, Kabuto quietly slipped away from the group and returned to the orphanage. On the roof of the orphanage stood a familiar figure, the man Kabuto knew well, none other than Byakuya. What Kabuto didn't know was that the Byakuya standing before him was not a clone but a real body. After learning the specific details of Kushina's delivery, Byakuya used his mayfly technique to arrive that night. In addition to fulfilling certain objectives, he was also there to witness the iconic events of the Night of the Ninetales. Kabuto climbed onto the roof, where the vantage point allowed him to see the battle raging outside the village. Sensing Kabuto's presence, Byakuya made space for him, chuckling softly. "Kabuto, are you here to watch the battle as well?" Kabuto's heart skipped a beat, and with some hesitation, he asked, "Sensei, could this attack on the village have anything to do with you? What do you think?" Byakuya answered with a question of his own. Seeing Kabuto's shocked expression, he shook his head with a smile and said, "I don't have the ability to release the Ninetales Jinchuriki, but the fact that the Jinchuriki would be attacked today was something I had anticipated. Since you're here, why not enjoy this rare battle with me?" Facing Byakuya's words, Kabuto Yakushi harbored doubts. He didn't believe that Byakuya hadn't had any involvement in tonight's attack. However, given Byakuya's power, even if he learned the truth, there would be little he could do about it. At this moment, there was a new development in the battle. With the third Hokage's fierce attacks and a steady stream of support from Hidden Leaf Village shinobi, the Ninetales had been pushed out of the village's boundaries. Seeing this, Kabuto felt a glimmer of relief. His anxiety eased considerably. Despite his dislike for Hidden Leaf Village due to his hometown's destruction and the threats from Root, Hidden Leaf Village had been his home for 2 years, and the orphanage was like family to him. If the orphanage were destroyed by the Ninetales, the children there would be left homeless. Noting Kabuto's evident concern, Byakuya seemed to have an idea and turned to him, saying, "Kabuto, do you think Hidden Leaf Village will make it through this crisis?" Kabuto was momentarily taken aback by the question, unsure of Byakuya's intent. After a moment of contemplation, he hesitantly replied, "If you don't intervene, the Ninetales shouldn't be able to overcome Hidden Leaf Village. The Hokage and the 3 Sanin are very strong." Byakuya smiled at this response. If Hidden Leaf Village could truly unite, the Ninetales would be nothing more than a pet, but if Hidden Leaf Village could have achieved that level of unity, tonight's attack wouldn't have happened in the first place. Kabuto couldn't quite understand what Byakuya was getting at. The elder seemed enigmatic and indifferent, almost dismissive of both the Hokage and the Ninetales as if neither were particularly formidable. Feeling puzzled, Kabuto hesitated before asking, "Are you really not planning to get involved in today's events? The orphanage might be in danger, and I don't want to see them harmed." Byakuya glanced at Kabuto and replied, "I won't easily intervene. Don't think you can trick me, but are you interested in following me around the village to see how the various ninja clans of Hidden Leaf Village are dealing with tonight's attack?" Kabuto instinctively wanted to refuse but eventually nodded. Byakuya didn't waste any more time, leading Kabuto back to the second floor of the orphanage. After setting up a ceiling barrier to block any sensory perception, he began using one of the Sharingan's abilities to project live feeds from various locations around Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 153, The Night of the Ninetales, Part 4, at the Root Base. After receiving orders to support the 3rd and 4th Hokage, Denzo did not immediately head to the front line to assist with the Ninetales rampage. Instead, he gathered all his subordinates and went to the outskirts of the Uchiha clan compound. Seeing this, Ryuma Ibarime asked in confusion, "Denzo-sama, shouldn't we be heading to support the 3rd and 4th Hokage? Why have we come to the Uchiha compound?" Denzo glanced at Ryuma with tried eyes before signing. "Ryuma, do you think the 3rd and 4th Hokage can't handle the Ninetales? Do they really need our support?" Ryuma nodded slightly, though he remained somewhat puzzled. Certainly, with the strength of the 3rd and 4th Hokage, they should be more than capable of dealing with the Ninetales. However, just because they can handle the Ninetales doesn't mean Root's ninjas can ignore the crisis unfolding before them. Denzo sighed quietly at Ryuma's lack of insight. As his subordinate, Ryuma should have been more perceptive than this. If Orochimaru were present, he would have understood Denzo's intentions, and his student Byakuya would certainly have grasped the underlying meaning. But Orochimaru was disloyal and had left the village to gather experimental materials, and Byakuya was a schemer who used Denzo's tactics against him. Despite Ryuma's dullness, his loyalty was undeniable. After a moment's thought, Denzo continued, "Ryuma, you only see the Ninetales causing chaos and conflict after breaking free from the host's seal, but you haven't seen the truth behind it." "What truth?" Ryuma asked, puzzled. Denzo looked at Ryuma and said, The Nine-Tails escape from its seal is no simple matter. There must be a ninja behind this, orchestrating the whole conspiracy. Who do you think has the capability to control the Nine-Tails? Could it be Uchiha? Ryuma hesitated for a moment before answering. Denzo nodded with a grin. That's right. Only the Uchiha's Sharingan can control the Nine-Tails. The reason the Nine-Tails broke free from its host must be that the Uchiha knew the host's delivery time and deliberately chose this moment to manipulate the Nine-Tails into attacking. Ryuma was somewhat skeptical of Denzo's explanation and muttered to himself, but Denzo-sama, if the Uchiha really had the ability to control tailed beasts, they should have used them in previous battles against the Hidden Stones village and Mist villages to turn the tide and gain the position of Hokage. The mention of Hokage made Denzo's expression shift. He knew there were logical flaws in his reasoning that couldn't stand up to scrutiny. However, he trusted the teachings of his mentor, Tobirama. The Uchiha were inherently evil ninjas, and under the influence of the Sharingan and chakra, their actions were unpredictable. This attack on the Nine-Tails host was certainly orchestrated by the Uchiha. With a serious expression, Denzo answered, "Follow my orders. Even if there is only a 1 in 10,000 chance, we cannot let the Uchiha find an opportunity to attack the village." "Yes, Denzo-sama." As his subordinates responded, Denzo's gaze inadvertently drifted toward the location of the Nine-Tails. He had brought his team to the outskirts of the Uchiha compound not only to guard against the Uchiha but also to preserve his strength, hoping for a future chance to become Hokage. He remembered a year ago when he had provided Byakuya with 2 strategies for seizing power. One was to develop quietly, waiting for all competitors to die off, and then naturally take the position of village leader through experience and influence. The other was to step up during a village crisis, becoming a hero in the eyes of the people and using absolute prestige and reputation to become the highest leader of the village. Denzo had always been intent on implementing the second strategy. Despite having the opportunity to become a hero, Denzo often hesitated, unwilling to risk death to become a figure of glory. In this regard, Byakuya's harsh words were accurate. Denzo indeed lacked the courage to be a hero. At the Uchiha clan compound, as Denzo led route to block the Uchiha compound, chaos erupted within the Uchiha clan. The moment the Nine-Tails appeared outside the village, they sensed its vast and violent chakra. Rather than causing them to retreat, the raging chakra of the Nine-Tails ignited their fighting spirit. They were eager to head to the battlefield to reclaim the Uchiha clan's honor. However, when the Uchiha ninjas assembled and appeared before the security building, they found root ninjas blocking their way. The message from the Hokage was clear: the Uchiha security force must remain in the compound and not step outside under any circumstances, or it would be considered treason. The command caused an immediate and severe reaction among the Uchiha ninjas. Some of them were ready to defy the order and leave the compound, but they were stopped by Fugaku Uchiha, the clan leader. Wearing his security force captain uniform, Fugaku said sternly, "Everyone, stay put. Do not step outside the compound." "Captain Fugaku, why?" "Yes, why are the Anbu preventing us from going out? If we don't support the village now, what will the ninjas and villagers think of us? They'll think we Uchiha are cowards, lacking even the courage to fight. Yes, we can accept death, but we cannot allow the Uchiha honor to be tarnished." Fugaku scanned the crowd, making eye contact with every Uchiha ninja. His tone was firm and unyielding as he said, "This is the Hokage's order. Do you want to be considered traitors? This is the Nine-Tails attacking the village, and while we haven't made any move against the host, only we Uchiha have the capability to control the Nine-Tails in the entire ninja world. It's only natural for the village to be wary of us." At this moment, an Uchiha Jonin stepped forward and said, "But we really haven't attacked the Nine-Tails. If we had the ability to control it, why would we have waited until now?" Fugaku glanced at the Jonin and replied, "Precisely because we are innocent, we must not leave the compound. Otherwise, we will be unable to clear our names in the aftermath of tonight's chaos. For the honor of the Uchiha, please be patient. The fourth Hokage, unlike the previous Hokages, does not discriminate against us Uchiha. He has issued many policies favorable to us in recent months. I believe that after tonight ends, the fourth Hokage will clear our suspicions." Chapter 154, Byakuya's Small Wish. On the second floor of the orphanage, after watching the live feed from Root and the Uchiha security force, Kabuto's face was filled with confusion. He couldn't understand why Denzo, the leader of Root, had chosen to station his troops at the Uchiha compound instead of heading directly to support the third and fourth Hokage against the rampaging Nine-Tails. Both parties aimed to protect Hidden Leaf Village, so why were they stuck in internal strife due to suspicion and mistrust instead of joining forces to confront the Nine-Tails? Was tonight's attack on Hidden Leaf Village really related to the Uchiha? Kabuto's mind wandered with various theories, but he quickly dismissed them upon glancing at his mysterious senior, Byakuya. Compared to the possibility of the Uchiha manipulating the Nine Tails, Byakuya seemed to be a more immediate concern. However, Kabuto still did not understand Byakuya's presence in the village. If Byakuya were an enemy of Hidden Leaf Village, he would have used this opportunity to cause massive destruction, not stay behind to watch the chaos unfold. If Byakuya were an ally, he should have already rushed to help. Was Byakuya really just here to observe, indifferent to the risk of being mistaken as an enemy and getting into trouble with Hidden Leaf Village? As Kabuto pondered, Byakuya ended the surveillance jutsu. In the past few minutes, Byakuya had gathered a good understanding of Hidden Leaf Village's military disposition. It was time to set his plan into motion. His plan was to use Obito's attack on Kushina as a diversion and seize the sealing techniques stored in the Hokage building during the ensuing chaos. This would provide critical support for Akatsuki's future operations. With the projection jutsu turned off, Kabuto, slightly disoriented, looked at Byakuya and asked, "Senior, what should we do next?" Byakuya glanced at Kabuto and replied, "I plan to visit the Hokage building. Would you like to come along? I don't mind taking a little one like you for a tour." Kabuto was alarmed by Byakuya's offer and shook his head vigorously. "I appreciate the offer, but I'd prefer to stay here with the headmaster. The headmaster and the others still need my care. If you're not interested, then so be it," Byakuya said with a hint of regret. "I was hoping to use this opportunity to take you out of Hidden Leaf Village, but it seems you're still attached to it. Well, I hope you make good use of the books I left in the room. We'll meet again in the future." Without giving Kabuto a chance to respond, Byakuya vanished into the shadows. Kabuto watched in a daze as Byakuya's figure leaped away. Byakuya wasn't joking, he was indeed heading toward the Hokage building. It seemed Byakuya's strength was as formidable as he had imagined, comparable to that of the 5 Kage. If Kabuto had such power, the headmaster wouldn't have to worry about the troubles from root. When would he be strong enough to protect the orphanage himself? Kabuto's thoughts were filled with mixed emotions. Then he remembered Byakuya's final words. Rushing back to his bed, Kabuto found a sealing scroll on his desk. When he opened it, a voice recording played, detailing several high-level jutsu scrolls and a sum of 500,000 ryo. On the other hand, upon sensing that his scroll had been opened, Byakuya's lips curled into a faint smile. He understood orphans like Kabuto very well. A little kindness could leave a lasting impression. The few months Byakuya had spent with Kabuto had surely left an indelible mark on him. Once Kabuto grew stronger, Byakuya would gain a powerful ninja far surpassing the level of a Kage. With the ability to perform the impure world reincarnation and having partially evolved into a snake sage in the Rechi cave, Kabuto was nearly qualified to engage in battles between the Otsutsuki clan members. These were beings capable of traversing the starry sky and achieving immortality. Yet, with his efforts and plans, there might still be a chance to surpass them in the future. Meanwhile, Byakuya arrived at the Hokage building. Due to the Nine Tails attack on Hidden Leaf Village, the Hokage building was under strict lockdown. The guards were on high alert, their nerves as taut as a bowstring, vigilantly monitoring every movement around them. However, the strongest ninjas in the Hokage building were not these guards, but the 3rd and 4th Hokage. Byakuya easily bypassed the guards' patrols and arrived at the Hokage's office. He comfortably settled into the Hokage's chair and looked up at the portraits of the Hokage displayed in the room. The first Hokage appeared somewhat bumbling, lacking the commanding presence one might expect from the founder of Hidden Leaf Village. The second Hokage had a sharp, suspicious gaze, as if everyone owed him money. His eyes were filled with doubt and vigilance. In contrast, the 3rd Hokage's portrait depicted him as a mature and steady leader, which made sense considering his tenure was longer than the combined terms of the previous 2 Hokage. Even with the 4th Hokage, his term still far surpassed theirs. Byakuya showed little interest in the portrait of the 4th Hokage. He would soon meet this short-lived Hokage and perhaps even have a chance to discuss past connections with him, and maybe even take care of the Death God mask in the process. Standing up from the Hokage's chair, Byakuya casually took the key from the safe. He went to the storage room where the sealing book was kept, used the key to open the door, and, sensing the sealing barrier inside, easily dispelled the vortex sealing jutsu. In the center of the room, the sealing book was displayed on a pedestal. Byakuya grabbed the sealing book, casually flipped through a few pages to confirm the presence of the corpse hell sealing jutsu, and then summoned a wood clone to take the book and leave the Hokage building. After successfully securing the sealing book, Byakuya did not leave immediately. Instead, he changed into an Anbu uniform and donned an animal mask before heading to the rooftop of the Hokage building. The rooftop offered an excellent vantage point. From there, Byakuya could overlook a large portion of Hidden Leaf Village and observe the battle between the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas and the Nine Tails. The Ninetales was the strongest of the tailed beasts, but Hidden Leaf Village was the strongest ninja village. With the arrival of the third Hokage, the two advisors, and top ninjas such as Jiraiya and Tsunade, the Ninetales began to show signs of weakening. Defeat was only a matter of time. Realizing that further conflict was futile, Obito, controlling the Ninetales, shifted his gaze as if crossing space and time, focusing on the Hokage rock above the Hokage building. If the so-called Hokage were merely a joke, then the Hokage rock, symbolizing the Hokage's authority, was also unworthy of continuing to exist. By destroying the Hokage rock, even if this attack failed, it would still deliver a significant blow to Hidden Leaf Village's morale. With this thought, Obito commanded the Ninetales to gather a tail beast bomb. A dark sphere suddenly appeared in front of the Ninetales, rapidly absorbing the surrounding chakra. The sphere quickly expanded to the size of a building in the blink of an eye. The next moment, the Ninetales unleashed the tailed beast bomb, hurling it towards the Hokage rock with unstoppable force. Seeing this, the third Hokage and others who were still fighting were momentarily stunned. They hadn't expected the Ninetales to abandon its fight with them and directly target the Hokage rock with the tailed beast bomb. If the tailed beast bomb were to hit the Hokage rock, even if the village survived this disaster, it would suffer immense damage and take many years to recover. At this moment, they had no time to stop it and could only hope for a miracle. On the rooftop, Byakuya also noticed the incoming tailed beast bomb but remained calm and showed no intention of avoiding it. Instead, he simply raised his middle finger at the approaching bomb. Chapter 155, The Advancing Golden Flash. As Byakuya noticed the incoming tailed beast bomb, the guards at the Hokage building did as well. Unlike Byakuya, their faces turned pale with despair. As they scrambled to find places to take cover from the impending explosion, they noticed Byakuya on the rooftop. They couldn't understand why Byakuya wasn't trying to evade the tailed beast bomb. It was a terrifying weapon capable of obliterating an entire town. Without strength comparable to the Hokage, no one could survive such an explosion. What they didn't know was that Byakuya wasn't avoiding the tailed beast bomb because he had the power to battle the Ninetales or because his wood style and Sharingan could counter all tailed beasts. Instead, he knew that Minato, the fourth Hokage, would definitely come to the rescue. Half a second later, just as the tailed beast bomb was about to strike the Hokage rock, Minato appeared on the cliffside. In his Hokage robes, Minato moved swiftly across the rock face, using kunai to set up his flying thunder god jutsu. He quickly bit his finger and chanted, summoning jutsu. The next moment, Gamabunta, the toad boss, descended from the sky and crashed heavily into the distant Ninetales. At the same instant, the flying thunder god jutsu successfully transported the tailed beast bomb, causing it to land in an uninhabited area several kilometers away. Witnessing this, all the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas present breathed a sigh of relief and engraved the image of the fourth Hokage into their memories. Once again, the fourth Hokage had turned the tide, saving Hidden Leaf Village from disaster. Among the crowd, Byakuya also took note of Minato's heroic figure. If Minato hadn't shown up, it would have been Byakuya who would have taken the spotlight. Byakuya hadn't had the time to evade the tailed beast bomb. If he had tried to withstand it, he would have exposed his identity. Becoming a hero of Hidden Leaf Village might have interfered with his subsequent plans. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Minato didn't have time to accept the crowd's gratitude. He had only come here because he sensed the village was in danger. Now, he needed to continue pursuing and eliminating the attacker responsible for this assault. Minato locked onto Obito's position and used the flying thunder god jutsu again. Appearing in the forest, Minato immediately spotted the masked man standing still and, not far from him, Kushina lying within a ceiling array with their child, Naruto, beside her. Wasn't Naruto supposed to be protected? How did he end up with Kushina? But it seemed the enemy had no intention of fleeing. Instead, he was preparing for a final battle. Obito, seeing Minato, smirked and said, "Fourth Hokage, did you enjoy my little gift? If you can't stop me, your village, your wife, and your child will all die by my hand." Hearing this, Minato's face darkened, and undeniable killing intent surged in his eyes as he growled, "No matter who you are, I will not let you escape." Seeing Minato's enraged expression, Obito's face grew grim. As he wrapped his chain scythe around his hand, he lunged at Minato. Minato was also ready for battle, gripping his kunai tightly as he prepared for the confrontation. With his mastery of space-time ninjutsu, Minato knew how powerful it could be. Today, he had to ensure that this enemy would stay in Hidden Leaf Village, otherwise, similar attacks would continue to plague the village. Both were incredibly fast ninjas, and they collided in the blink of an eye. After deflecting Minato's kunai, Obito slipped into his intangible state, hoping to avoid the kunai's thrust. He then aimed to stab Minato in the heart with his scythe. Having successfully become intangible, Obito's mask seemed to show a victorious smirk as he envisioned his triumph. Although the Flying Thunder God Jutsu was powerful, with the addition of the Kamui ability, Minato, who only knew the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, was no longer a match for him. This was the might of the Mengekyo Sharingan. However, when the attack failed, Minato staggered slightly, indicating that the battle was far from over. Minato was astonished. Despite landing a kunai in Obito's body, Obito had used some form of space-time ability to evade the fatal blow. Had Obito's body already shifted to another dimension? Understanding the gravity of the situation, Minato devised a new plan. Minato first traversed through Obito's body with his kunai, and just as Obito was vanishing, he used the second stage of his Flying Thunder God Jutsu to reappear directly above Obito. Flying Thunder God's second stage. Rasengan. With a cold, emotionless shout, Minato's Rasengan slammed into Obito's back with overwhelming force, shattering rocks and breaching Obito's defenses. The impact fractured Obito's bones and internal organs. Obito, struck by such a powerful attack, coughed up blood, his eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't believe the gap between him and Minato was so vast. The young Byakuya's words had proven true, although he had mastered space-time abilities, he was still inexperienced against top-tier shinobi. Without hesitation, Obito summoned the Nine Tails again, planning to use its power to overcome his former teacher. Taking advantage of Obito's dazed state, Minato reappeared in front of him and performed a contract seal. From their previous engagement, Minato had identified the Nine Tails as Obito's summon beast. However, he was puzzled as to why the Nine Tails was Obito's summon and why Obito's combat experience was so lacking. Minato, not fully understanding the situation, left a Flying Thunder God mark on Obito before creating distance. Seizing the opportunity, Obito quickly used his intangibility technique, retreating several meters and vanishing into a vortex. He had lost. He had thoroughly been defeated by his former teacher. If he didn't escape now, he might lose his life. He had to flee for now and return later to execute his plans to weaken Hidden Leaf Village. Minato didn't spare another glance at the fleeing Obito. His wife was still gravely injured, and with the Nine Tails released due to the contract seal, he needed to defeat the beast to protect the village and his family. On the other side, Obito emerged from the Kamui dimension, collapsing on a clearing in the Forest of Death. As he lay there, weak and battered, Black Zetsu looked at him with disdain. He ordered White Zetsu to heal Obito while speaking with a stern expression. Obito, it seems your plan has failed. Now, do you understand the risks this failure has brought upon us? After this attack, the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki will certainly conduct a thorough investigation. With a space-time ninja under scrutiny, the Eye of the Moon plan will be even more difficult to achieve than before. Obito, unable to respond due to the pain, could only listen. Black Zetsu continued, but it's not all bad. Byakuya has also arrived in Hidden Leaf Village. He will clean up this mess for you. Chapter 156, The Darkness Hidden in the Shadows. After learning from Black Zetsu that Byakuya had arrived in Hidden Leaf Village, Obito's face immediately changed. Although Byakuya was also a participant in the Eye of the Moon plan, he constantly overshadowed Obito. Not only could he, like Minato no Mikaze, see through Obito's space-time ninjutsu, but his strategic mind was even more refined. Obito had just managed to develop a plan to weaken Hidden Leaf Village, spending a lot of time preparing for it. Yet at the critical moment, he was defeated by his former teacher and now had to watch Byakuya take credit for his work. This was something Obito, who had always been sensitive and fragile, could not accept. The wounds on his body, which had only just begun to heal, ripped open again. Seeing Obito show such a vulnerable side, Black Zetsu secretly shook his head. Compared to Byakuya, Obito was far too immature. It made Black Zetsu wonder why Madara Uchiha had chosen Obito in the first place. Thinking of this, Black Zetsu turned his gaze to where the Nine Tails was, eagerly anticipating Byakuya's return with good news. Deep in the dark forest, Byakuya was observing a battle between powerful shinobi of Kage level. The two sides in combat were Minato no Mikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, and the Nine Tails, which had broken free from the control of the Sharingan. In this narrow space, they were engaged in a life-and-death struggle. To be honest, the battle between the fourth Hokage, the Red Dot of an Arrow couple, and the Nine-Tailed Fox wasn't all that thrilling. As the fourth Hokage, Minato was incredibly powerful, but after transferring the Tail Beast Bomb and fighting against the masked man Obito, he had little chakra left. Kushina was even weaker, having just gone through childbirth and being in a state of extreme exhaustion. While the Nine Tails was the strongest of the tailed beasts, it had just been controlled by the Sharingan and fought a fierce battle with Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi. It too was running low on chakra. Well, not really. At this moment, both sides were on the verge of collapse, and the battle could end at any moment. However, it is in moments like these that incredible willpower and battle strategy can emerge, and Byakuya certainly wouldn't miss such a spectacular display. After dodging the Ninetales' claws, Kushina unleashed the last of her chakra. Suddenly, 8 golden chains, each tens of meters long, shot out from her back. The chains crossed over one another, locking the Ninetales firmly to the ground, making even the slightest movement difficult. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Minato quickly summoned Gamabunta. Gamabunta landed heavily on top of the Ninetales, then drew a short sword over 10 meters long from his waist, thrusting it into the Ninetales' body, impaling it. Seeing this, Byakuya couldn't help but marvel at the powerful physique of the Uzumaki clan. Even on the verge of death, they could summon enough strength to suppress a tailed beast temporarily. The giant toads of Mount Mayabaku also deserved respect. Though Gamabunta wasn't as strong as a tailed beast, Mount Mayabaku had 3 such powerful toads. Combined with the mysterious Great Toad Sage, Mount Mayabaku's strength rivaled that of a shinobi village. But while temporarily suppressing the Ninetales was one thing, fully defeating it was far more difficult. A tailed beast's greatest strength wasn't its destructive power but its terrifying regenerative ability. As Byakuya pondered, the Ninetales launched a counterattack. Lowering its head to gather chakra, the Ninetales began forming a tailed beast bomb in its mouth. It intended to fire this bomb at the ground to break free from Kushina's sealing technique. A tailed beast's life force is boundless. Even if it dies momentarily, it will eventually resurrect over time. Sensing the immense energy in the tailed beast bomb, Gamabunta swung his sword at it. A mushroom cloud erupted between the two giants and the violent explosion even caused the surrounding space to tremble slightly. When the explosion subsided, half of the Ninetales' face had been blown off, and Gamabunta had returned to Mount Mayabaku. Minato and Kushina were thrown dozens of meters away by the shockwave, like leaves in a storm, with blood trickling from their mouths. Seeing the Ninetales in the distance, rapidly regenerating, Minato looked at Kushina with a serious expression and said, "Kushina, it seems we won't survive this day." Kushina was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion, "Why? You can use the Flying Thunder God technique to escape. There's no need to die with me. Besides, after a Jinchuriki has the tailed beast extracted, they don't have much time left to live anyway." Minato no Mikaze shook his head gently, smiling softly as he replied, "Kushina, I can't just stand by and watch you die, nor can I allow the Ninetales to roam free outside of Hidden Leaf Village." After a brief pause, he continued, "I intend to use the Reaper Death Seal to seal the Ninetales into Naruto." Hearing this, Kushina froze in place, looking over at baby Naruto crying in his swaddling clothes. She said, "But what about Naruto? He's already lost his mother, he can't lose his father too. I believe Naruto can take care of himself. I also believe in the Hidden Leaf Village we've sacrificed our lives to protect." Minato gave a forced smile, then pulled out the Shinigami mask. His hand swiftly formed seals, completing the hand signs for the Reaper Death Seal. A spectral figure of the Grim Reaper appeared behind Minato, its previously shut eyes now wide open. Seeing Minato perform the Reaper Death Seal, Kushina sighed in her heart. Since Minato had made his decision, as his wife, she could only support him. She used the last of her life force to restrain the Ninetales' movements. Sensing the terror of the Reaper Death Seal, a look of fear spread across the Ninetales' vicious face. It didn't want to be imprisoned inside a Jinchuriki's body again, nor did it want to spend decades staring at 2 grim-faced women. As a tailed beast, it had the right to roam freely across the land. Noticing the panic on the Ninetales' face, Kushina smiled and said, "Ninetales, I'm sorry I can't stay with you any longer, but my son will still be with you." The Ninetales struggled fiercely against the Reaper Death Seal, growling and cursing. However, the strength of the Reaper Death Seal exceeded the Ninetales' expectations. Under its power, the Ninetales was swiftly split in 2, half was sealed inside Naruto, while the other half was devoured by the Grim Reaper. After completing this, Minato had burned through all his life force. Just before his soul was taken away by the Grim Reaper, he looked at Kushina and severed part of her chakra, sealing it within himself. The reason Minato used the Reaper Death Seal wasn't just to protect Hidden Leaf Village by keeping the Ninetales, but also to preserve Kushina's chakra, allowing her to witness Naruto growing up someday. With great effort, he walked over to Naruto's side and, looking down at his son in the swaddling cloth, said with a complex expression, "I wish I could see you grow up, but unfortunately, your father is a weak man. Having chosen to be Hokage, I naturally have to bear the responsibilities that come with it." At that moment, an untimely voice echoed in Minato's ear, "Fourth Hokage, you truly are an incompetent Hokage, so incompetent that you can't even see Hidden Leaf Village's true face. Do you really think Hidden Leaf Village will take care of Naruto?" Chapter 157, The Fall of the Fourth Hokage. Upon hearing the voice, Minato immediately looked toward its source. After focusing, Minato saw a figure hiding within the forest. This person was dressed in the uniform of the Anbu, wearing an animal mask, looking exactly like any other member of the Anbu. What made Minato particularly wary was the fact that he couldn't sense this person's chakra. This could mean two things: either this person had chakra levels similar to an ordinary civilian and was thus overlooked, or this individual had the ability to conceal their chakra far beyond Minato's ability to sense. It was clear that the figure in front of him was the latter, a ninja whose strength was impossible to gauge. After observing for a few moments, Minato narrowed his gaze. Suddenly, he recalled the moment half an hour ago when he transferred the tailed beast bomb. This figure had appeared on the rooftop of the Hokage's office, but Minato had ignored them at the time. Feeling his chakra fading, Minato tried to get up and confront the intruder, only to find he was no longer capable. The mysterious figure appeared in an instant beside him and Kushina, cradling the infant Naruto in their arms. While soothing Naruto, the figure said, "What a truly adorable child. He should bear his mother's name, Naruto Uzumaki, right?" The ninja holding Naruto was none other than Byakuya. After witnessing Minato's use of the Reaper Death Seal, Byakuya knew he could no longer delay and appeared before Minato and Kushina. Staring intently at Byakuya, Minato asked coldly, "Who are you, and what's your connection to the masked man from earlier?" Byakuya glanced at Minato and replied indifferently, "Why should I tell you? That masked man you mentioned is indeed a fool. I even warned him that your Flying Thunder God technique would be tricky, and yet he still lost to you." Hearing these words, Minato felt as though he had plunged into an icy abyss. So, they really were working together. What had these two been through, and why were they both targeting Hidden Leaf Village? However, Minato no longer had the strength to stop them. At this moment, Byakuya silently picked up the Grim Reaper mask from the ground and moved over to Kushina's side. Due to excessive blood loss, Kushina had already passed out. Byakuya first stitched up her wounds and then took out a blood bag, administering it to her. Seeing this, Minato was taken aback. He asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" Byakuya glanced at him and replied, "Obviously, I'm saving her." "What, the fourth Hokage doesn't even know how to dress wounds?" Minato frowned and asked, "Why are you saving Kushina?" Byakuya paused for a moment, his expression cold. "If you don't want me to, I can stop right now. After all, Hidden Leaf Village has already paid its price, so it makes no difference to me." "Price?" Minato was puzzled. Then, recalling that Byakuya had appeared on the Hokage's rooftop earlier, he started to piece things together. "Did you sneak into the Hokage office and steal something?" Byakuya nodded slightly. "I took something, yes. But I prefer to think of it as a transaction. The life of the Hokage's wife should be worth more than a bunch of old scrolls, don't you think?" Minato didn't know how to respond, but he couldn't let Byakuya abandon Kushina's rescue. However, the chances of a Jinchuriki surviving after losing their tailed beast were slim. Did this man truly have the ability to save Kushina? Reading Minato's thoughts, Byakuya said calmly, "A Jinchuriki dies after the tailed beast is extracted because they lose a massive amount of life force and soul energy all at once. But if life force is replenished in time, it can delay death. And it just so happens that I possess this ability, and I've been tasked by a certain someone to come and assist one of the Uzumaki clan's more disappointing members." Tasked by someone? Disappointing clan member? Minato picked up on something strange and asked Byakuya, "Who sent you here? Was it Hidden Rain Village or the Akatsuki? Is your name Byakuya?" As Minato Namikaze bombarded Byakuya with questions, Byakuya, growing impatient, said coldly, "You're a dying man. Stop asking so much and obediently stay inside the belly of the Reaper." "You," Minato tried to speak, but before he could finish, Byakuya reached into Minato's body, forcibly extracting his soul and sealing it directly into the Reaper mask. This mask, meticulously crafted by Byakuya, was different from the original version. Normally, the Reaper mask allowed one to summon the Shinigami during the Reaper Death Seal casting, using the user's chakra and soul to trap both the caster and their target within the Shinigami's stomach. However, Byakuya had modified this function. Having obtained some of the abilities of the Rinnegan, he replaced the Reaper summoning ritual with a summoning of the King of Hell from the Path of Hell. This allowed him to redirect the sealing location of half of the Nine Tails and Minato's soul into himself. Of course, such a modification came at a cost. To substitute the Reaper and seal half of the Nine Tails, Byakuya had expended a massive amount of chakra. He had almost reached his limit. If Minato had tried to seal the entire Nine Tails, the ritual might have failed altogether. But in the end, Byakuya walked away with the best outcome. Not only did he secure half of the Nine Tails, but he also obtained the soul of the fourth Hokage. This would allow him to potentially summon Minato later with the Edo Tensei reanimation jutsu, granting the Akatsuki a powerful warrior with mastery over space-time ninjutsu. Shaking himself from these thoughts, Byakuya turned his gaze toward Kushina and Naruto. Naruto, now the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki and the reincarnation of Azura, held tremendous potential. If Byakuya were to take Naruto and train him, his potential would far surpass that of Orochimaru's apprentice, Kabuto. But after a moment of consideration, Byakuya discarded this impractical idea. While he might have displayed an air of superiority in front of Minato, facing both Minato and Kushina in a direct battle would have been risky. If he kidnapped Naruto now, the 5 great shinobi nations would declare war on the Akatsuki much sooner. Byakuya had no desire to live a life constantly on the run from the entire shinobi world. However, Kushina, who was still unconscious, and the body of the 4th Hokage could be of use. With that in mind, Byakuya quickly performed a series of hand seals, creating a wood clone. Together with his clone, they began moving Kushina and Minato's body, heading deep underground. Not long after Byakuya left, the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, finally arrived at the scene with a large contingent of Anbu. Upon seeing the destruction wrought by the battle, Hiruzen's heart sank. He had a bad feeling about what had transpired. As he moved toward the center of the battlefield, he spotted Naruto, now soundly asleep in his swaddling clothes. At that moment, the Anbu commander beside him asked, "Lord Third, where are the 4th Hokage, his wife, and the Nine-Tails? Why have they suddenly disappeared?" Hiruzen glanced at the sleeping Naruto, sensing the immense chakra of the Nine-Tails within the infant. Coupled with the faint chakra residue in the area, a theory began to form in his mind. After a deep sigh, Hiruzen said softly, "Minato and Kushina have likely sacrificed themselves. Before they died, they must have sealed the Nine-Tails into their child." Chapter 158, How Does It Feel to Attack Hidden Leaf Village? Have Lord Minato and Lady Kushina really sacrificed themselves? Hearing the news of the 4th Hokage and Kushina's deaths, the surrounding Hidden Leaf Village shinobi were visibly shocked, their faces filled with disbelief. They couldn't fathom that the 4th Hokage, who had just been seen saving the village atop Hokage Rock, had died during the process of sealing the Nine-Tails, leaving not even a body behind. Wait. If Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki have both perished, then where are their bodies? The thought crossed the mind of the Anbu commander, who turned to Hiruzen, saying, "Lord Third, there are no remains of Lord Minato or Lady Kushina here. Could it be that they haven't died and are just hiding somewhere to heal?" Hearing this, the 3rd Hokage furrowed his brow and pondered, "Shin, your guess isn't without reason, but the only technique capable of sealing the Nine-Tails in such a short time is the Reaper Death Seal. However, our priority now is to settle the villagers and investigate the culprit. If Minato and Kushina were still alive, they wouldn't have left this child behind." After speaking, the 3rd Hokage picked up the baby Naruto from the ground and headed back towards the village. His words left the surrounding shinobi with heavy hearts. Though they didn't want to believe that the 4th Hokage and his wife had sacrificed themselves, the facts were in front of them. Whether it's the loss of a tailed beast from a Jinchuriki or the use of a forbidden technique like the Reaper Death Seal, the user would be doomed. Glancing at the full moon in the sky and the extinguished lights in the distance, the Hidden Leaf Village shinobi sighed softly and followed the 3rd Hokage. After evading the Byakugan scouts from the Hyuga clan, Byakuya arrived at the prearranged meeting point with Black Zetsu. At this moment, Obito was sitting on the ground, transplanting limbs from White Zetsu. When he saw Byakuya approaching, his expression immediately darkened. He knew Byakuya would undoubtedly mock him, so he turned his face away. Black Zetsu, spotting Byakuya approaching, quickly asked, "Byakuya, what's the status of the 4th Hokage and the Nine-Tails? Did you kill them?" Byakuya glanced at Black Zetsu and shook his head, saying, "My original plan was to strike when Minato and the Nine-Tails were both exhausted, but I didn't expect Minato to use the Reaper Death Seal and seal the Nine-Tails into his son. The Reaper Death Seal is a one-time use sealing technique that kills the user, so I didn't risk exposing myself to intervene." Hearing this, Obito quickly turned around, staring at Byakuya as he said, "Byakuya, it seems your cleanup efforts weren't that great. I thought you'd be able to defeat Minato head-on, but it turns out you just scavenged after the fight. Better than getting severely injured by the Flying Thunder God. I wouldn't know the pleasure of getting hit by a Rasengan." Byakuya retorted. "You." Obito wanted to retort, but then recalled something and said, "When I was fighting Minato, you were nearby. Why didn't you step in to assist?" Without changing his expression, Byakuya replied calmly, "Masked man, I'm not your babysitter. If you come up with a plan, then you should see it through yourself. Besides, if I had interfered, someone might have accused me of stealing the credit." Obito fell silent. If the fight had been interrupted, he probably would have mocked Byakuya. However, who could have expected that the Flying Thunder God technique had a second phase? If his body hadn't been modified by White Zetsu cells, he would have been dead already. Byakuya, unwilling to let Obito off so easily, added with a smirk, but I'm really curious about something. As Uchiha, how does it feel to control the Nine Tails to attack your own village? Does it bring joy, pain, or maybe a bit of sorrow? I don't know. Obito thought to himself. He genuinely had no idea what he felt when he controlled the Nine Tails to attack Hidden Leaf Village. It was as if he were in a dream, devoid of any real emotions. Yes, this hellish world was just one long nightmare. Yes, this hellish world is nothing but a nightmare. No matter the wrongdoings committed in this world, as long as the Eye of the Moon plan is realized, everything can be restarted. While Obito was lost in thought, Black Zetsu, growing impatient, asked, Byakuya, stop mocking the masked man. Let's get down to business. You said the fourth Hokage sealed the Night Tails with his life, so you must have captured the Night Tails Jinchuriki, right? Byakuya shook his head and replied, Sorry, Black Zetsu, I didn't take the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Hearing this, Black Zetsu's expression changed slightly. This wasn't what it had anticipated. It had assumed Byakuya would capture the Nine Tails Jinchuriki and would have been prepared to start collecting the other tailed beasts early. Byakuya glanced at Black Zetsu and explained, Black Zetsu-senpai, I think starting to collect the nine-tailed beasts right now would be extremely unwise. The reason the masked man could cause the Nine Tails incident today is because the three legendary Sannin weren't around, and the Jinchuriki was in a perfect moment of vulnerability due to childbirth. At any other time, let alone taking on Hidden Leaf Village alone, even if we teamed up, dealing with the fourth Hokage and his wife would be very difficult. In this situation, if we were to take the Nine Tails, it would undoubtedly alert the five great nations and put us in a world against us scenario. We don't have the strength to oppose the five great shinobi villages, even with the support of Hidden Rain Village. Tonight, being able to eliminate both the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki in one fell swoop is already the best possible outcome. I don't want to ruin our plan to unify the shinobi world by acting for short-term gain. At this point, Obito, having snapped out of his daze, interjected, in the end, you're just not confident in your own strength. If we lose this opportunity today, it will be even harder to capture the Nine Tails in the future. Black Zetsu glanced at Obito and said, No, I think Byakuya makes a lot of sense. Killing both the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki tonight has been a huge victory for us. To begin the Eye of the Moon plan, we certainly need more preparation. Obito's face grew stormy upon hearing Black Zetsu take Byakuya's side. He, after all, was supposed to be Madar's successor, while Black Zetsu was merely a will-parasitizing White Zetsu. How dare it oppose him like this? The more he thought about it, the angrier Obito became, but in the end, he clenched his fists and let it go. Next, Obito used Kamyu to enter his own space. After Obito left, neither Black Zetsu nor Byakuya showed any intention of leaving. The two exchanged glances before Byakuya, with a grim expression, said, Black Zetsu-senpai, isn't the masked man being disrespectful to you? How many times has he walked away like this? Hearing this, Black Zetsu recalled how both Obito and Byakuya treated him, and his face darkened as well. He sighed lightly and said, The masked man has the power of a space-time dojutsu. It's not surprising that he lacks respect for his elders. However, this time, he suffered a great loss, nearly dying at the hands of the fourth Hokage. I imagine he'll be more obedient from now on. Pausing for a moment, Black Zetsu looked at Byakuya and continued, By the way, I've drafted a plan for the future of the Akatsuki organization, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it to see if anything needs to be changed. Byakuya glanced at Black Zetsu, thinking to himself that it didn't really have any plan at all. Ever since manipulating Indra, this little black figure had never come up with a proper strategy, always relying on the various incarnations of Indra to improvise. However, despite his inner complaints, Byakuya began to seriously explain his plan for the next steps to Black Zetsu. Chapter 159, Uchiha's Gaze. After leaving Byakuya and Black Zetsu behind, Obito didn't immediately leave Hidden Leaf Village. Instead, he quietly slipped into the residential areas of the village. He knew that Byakuya and Black Zetsu were likely discussing him in his absence, but all of Black Zetsu's actions were under his command. The purpose was to deceive and manipulate Byakuya. No matter how arrogant Byakuya was, or how much he mocked and ridiculed him, it didn't change the fact that Byakuya was just a pawn. After moving swiftly through the village, Obito arrived at the remote Uchiha district. Due to its secluded location, the Uchiha compound hadn't suffered much from the earlier events. The familiar streets and buildings, along with a few recognizable Uchiha shinobi, stood as they always had. It didn't take long for Obito to notice the ongoing standoff between the Uchiha police force and members of Denzo's root division on the outskirts of the compound. Seeing the two groups still harboring suspicion and mistrust, even after the village had just faced an external enemy, a cold smile crept onto Obito's face. Hidden Leaf Village was still Hidden Leaf Village, hiding its darkness beneath a shiny facade. He had previously worried about what to do if he encountered members of his clan while carrying out his plans, but it seemed Denzo's route had already cordoned them off in the district. Now, all Obito needed to do was subtly spread the rumor that the Uchiha were behind the attack. This would sow further discord between the clan and the village. In such heated conflicts, a pair of eyes he had been waiting for would surely emerge. Yes, after suffering a recent defeat, Obito decided it was time to cultivate his own forces. Only by raising a competent group of subordinates could he regain control of the Eye of the Moon clan. And besides the distant Hidden Mist Village, Hidden Leaf Village's Uchiha clan was the most suitable group for him to nurture his new power. However, which clan member would make the perfect subordinate? He needed to observe carefully. At that very moment, inside the Uchiha district, the standoff between Root and the Uchiha police force continued. Denzo suspected that the Uchiha were behind tonight's attack, keeping a close watch on every move the police force made. Meanwhile, the Uchiha considered Denzo's suspicions unfounded and discriminatory. With both sides unwilling to back down, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. At that moment, an Anbu ninja approached Denzo, whispering a few words into his ear. Denzo's expression softened considerably. He glanced deeply at the Uchiha in the distance before leading his men away from the area. The Anbu ninja who had approached him was one of Denzo's spies. Root had always been a training ground for the Anbu, and even though these ninjas had gone on to serve under the 3rd and 4th Hokage, many remained loyal to Denzo. The spy had brought 2 critical pieces of information. The first was good news: the Nine-Tails rampage had been quelled, and thanks to the efforts of the 4th Hokage, the beast had been resealed. The ninja responsible for the attack had reportedly fled in a severely wounded state. The second piece of information was bad news: in the process of sealing the Nine-Tails, the 3rd Hokage's wife had sacrificed herself, and both the 4th Hokage and his wife were missing. Countless Jonin had died during the chaos. Upon hearing this, Denzo's mood became conflicted. The fact that the Nine-Tails had been resealed was undoubtedly good news, but the disappearance of the 4th Hokage left him with mixed feelings. In the shinobi world, a missing ninja was almost synonymous with death. The death of the 4th Hokage meant that the village would soon hold another Hokage election. With both Tsunade and Jiraiya unwilling to run for the position, his and Orochimaru's chances of becoming the 5th Hokage would greatly increase. This was fantastic news for him. However, losing the 4th Hokage also meant that Hidden Leaf Village had lost its Yellow Flash, the man who struck fear into the hearts of other villages. Combined with the loss of the Jinchuriki, the village would lose 2 of its most formidable assets. This could embolden Hidden Leaf Village's newly allied nations to break their treaties, and the recently subdued Cloud Village might once again become restless. Moreover, without the strong leadership of the 4th Hokage, the rebellious Uchiha clan might begin entertaining thoughts of a coup. Still, these were matters for after he became Hokage. For now, his focus had to remain on seizing the opportunity to secure the position of the 5th Hokage. Denzo and his Root members' sudden departure did not go unnoticed by the Uchiha. Many Uchiha ninja turned their attention toward their clan leader, Fugaku, hoping he would step forward and explain the situation. Feeling the pressure from his clan, Fugaku sighed internally. He wasn't entirely sure what had transpired. Judging by the distant commotion, it seemed that the Nine-Tails had been resealed. But he didn't know which shinobi village had attacked Hidden Leaf Village. Despite his uncertainty, he had managed to keep the more radical members of his clan from leaving the compound. Had any of them stepped outside, it would have given Denzo the perfect excuse to accuse the Uchiha and further marginalize the clan. At this moment, Itachi Uchiha, holding his younger brother Sasuke, appeared near the security building. Upon seeing the Uchiha ninja gathered in the open area in front of the security building, Itachi's expression turned to one of disappointment. Just 2 hours earlier, he had been resting in the hallway with his brother, only for the village to suddenly come under attack. He had witnessed the colossal Nine-Tails rampaging through the village. While trying to get his mother and brother to safety, they had narrowly avoided being hit by falling debris. Upon arriving at the refuge, he saw countless ordinary people injured by the disaster. Seeing those scenes, Itachi could not understand why his clan, despite already being gathered at the security building, had yet to assist the village. Were they intending to conserve their strength while the village was in crisis? Itachi speculated that this hesitation might be due to the existing rift between the clan and the villagers. He was aware of his father's ambitions for the Hokage position and the criticisms made in secret. Yet, everyone in the village was supposed to be allies. The division should not be so stark. His father's failure to become Hokage was due to the Uchiha's incomplete integration into the village and their lack of achievements to earn universal trust. With a soft sigh, Itachi felt even more confused about the world. If only Shizue were here, he thought. Shizui would certainly help clarify his doubts. Unfortunately, Shizui had left the village a few days ago for a reconnaissance mission on the borders. No, Itachi shook his head slightly. If Shizui were here, he certainly wouldn't retreat like the other clan members, he would have led them to assist the front lines. As Itachi was lost in thought, Obito, who was observing potential candidates for recruitment, noticed the small, troubled figure of Itachi. His gaze gradually became more focused on the young Uchiha. The Uchiha clan had many members with intense emotions, including some who were extreme. However, a young Uchiha showing such deep confusion was noteworthy and might have the potential to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan in the future. With this in mind, Obito made a mental note of Itachi's presence. Chapter 160, The Spoils of the Night. After controlling the Uchiha clan members with his Sharingan and identifying Itachi, Obito intended to continue scouting other potential Uchiha candidates for cultivation. However, his body could no longer sustain his prolonged presence and infiltration. He had to temporarily withdraw from the Uchiha clan grounds. The reason was quite simple. Although Obito could recover his injuries quickly by using White Zetsu's body, the transplantation of White Zetsu's body was not without its costs. White Zetsu was a product of cells cultivated from Hashirama, and not everyone could bear the consequences of transplanting these cells. Even as Uchiha with the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan, recovering to his peak condition after transplanting White Zetsu's body required several weeks or even months of rest to avoid permanent side effects. Returning to the small forest where he had been hiding, Obito found that Byakuya and Black Zetsu were engaged in a heated discussion. As expected, his guess had been correct. While he was away, Byakuya and Black Zetsu had delved into future plans. Obito didn't interrupt their discussion. He waited patiently until Byakuya departed, and only then did he reveal himself to Black Zetsu. When alone with Obito, Black Zetsu adopted a submissive stance. Before Obito could speak, Black Zetsu proactively said, "Obito, I've learned about Byakuya's future plans." After listening to Black Zetsu's recounting of Byakuya's plans, Obito nodded slightly. Then, as if recalling something, he said, "Black Zetsu, when will I be able to surpass Byakuya and become the leader of Akatsuki? I can't stand his arrogant demeanor anymore." Black Zetsu looked puzzled and replied, "Obito, having Byakuya as our leader is beneficial. Firstly, he will help us gather the tailed beasts, and secondly, he will divert the hatred away from us. No matter how arrogant he seems now, everything will turn around once Madara-sama is resurrected." Obito's expression returned to calm. He understood the logic behind Black Zetsu's words, but Byakuya always seemed to find his weaknesses and strike precisely at them. On the other side, after concluding the discussion with Black Zetsu about the tailed beast weapons plan, Byakuya stealthily returned to Hidden Leaf Village. With the plan to weaken Hidden Leaf Village through Obito successfully completed, it was time for him to find a place to get some rest and assess the spoils from the operation. The greatest gains from this operation were undoubtedly the fourth Hokage and the half of the Nine Tails, as well as the sealing book obtained from the Hokage Tower. The sealing book was invaluable, containing numerous forbidden techniques collected by Hidden Leaf Village, encapsulating decades of the village's finest jutsu. Among them were the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the dead demon consuming seal, and the impure world reincarnation technique. Although these forbidden techniques couldn't be widely used due to the book's restricted access, it was still possible to pass on some of them to a few trusted subordinates. Techniques like the multi-shadow clone jutsu and the 8 gates could significantly enhance a ninja's combat effectiveness, with only minor insignificant costs. Despite the fourth Hokage's death and Kushina's severe injury, the fourth Hokage could be revived at any time using the impure world reincarnation, allowing Byakuya to acquire a ninja skilled in space-time ninjutsu. Kushina's role, though less apparent, might be crucial in the future. As the mother of the prophecy child, she might have significant uses later on. Additionally, reinforcing his identity as a descendant of the Uzumaki could deceive Black Zetsu. As for the half of the Nine Tails sealed by the dead demon-consuming seal, it was even more valuable. The Nine Tails, being the strongest tailed beast, would greatly enhance Byakuya's already ample chakra reserves, ensuring that no one could have too much chakra. As Byakuya was quietly reviewing his gains, a crisp system notification sound suddenly rang in his ears. The Nine Tails, Ian, has joined the Akatsuki. You have obtained the Nine Tails power, Ian. Nine Tails power, Ian, the inherent power of the Nine Tails. Once you gather both Yin and Yang forces, you will acquire the complete power of the Nine Tails. Upon hearing the system prompt, Byakuya clicked to claim the reward and opened the system panel. Name, Byakuya. Age, 16. Current affiliated organization, Akatsuki. Chakra attributes, water, earth, wind, yang, yin. Ninjutsu, transformation jutsu, basic kunai throwing technique, wind style jutsu, water style, jutsu, basic paper jutsu, transformation jutsu, spore jutsu, mayfly jutsu, bloodline limits, basic wood style, basic yin-yang style, Sharingan, special abilities, Nine Tails power, yin, bloodline, Ashura bloodline, pseudo, personal evaluation, a top-tier shinobi among shadows, capable of easily defeating most ninjas. However, against true strong foes, the chance to escape is very slim. On his personal panel, the Nine Tails power, yin, had appeared, and a vast amount of chakra had suddenly emerged within him, likely the portion of Nine Tails power he had just acquired. Seeing the Nine Tails power on his panel, Byakuya couldn't help but smile wryly. He was still contemplating how to utilize the half Nine Tails he had, yet the system had directly rewarded him with the yin attribute power of the Nine Tails. Upon carefully feeling the yin attribute Nine Tails power within him, Byakuya didn't notice anything particularly special about it. Unlike the other eight-tailed beasts, the Nine Tails chakra itself lacked a distinct attribute. Its greatest advantage was its sheer volume, which could be quite filling. At least now, he could try handcrafting a tailed beast bomb. However, one thing caught Byakuya's attention. He had obtained the fourth Hokage and half of the Nine Tails, yet only the Nine Tails was counted as Akatsuki's asset, while the unconscious Kushina and deceased Minato were not. Could it be because the Nine Tails was a tailed beast rather than a ninja? Suppressing his urge to grumble, Byakuya turned his attention to the other sections of the system panel. The ninjutsu section was already densely populated with techniques. The bloodline and bloodline sections, however, drew Byakuya's attention. While the bloodline limits remained largely unchanged, showing basic wood style, and Sharingan, the bloodline section had changed slightly, now listing Ashura bloodline, pseudo. Seeing this, Byakuya was somewhat surprised. Ashura was the younger son of Sage of the Six Paths, and his bloodline was now akin to Ashura's. If he continued to recruit powerful individuals, there might be a chance to possess the Six Paths bloodline and become a member of the Otsutsuki clan in the future. Pulling back his drifting thoughts, Byakuya looked at the final evaluation of his strength. The system's evaluation of his strength remained consistent with before, still surpassing most ninjas but susceptible to being overpowered by a few strong ones. This indicated that although his strength had grown significantly, he still needed to continue working hard to become a major player in Akatsuki and in the ninja world. Chapter 161, Acting Hokage. The next morning, inside the third Hokage's office. Having not slept all night, the third Hokage took a sip of coffee and then lit a pipe to puff out of stress, barely managing to lift his spirits under the effects of nicotine. As a ninja, the third Hokage knew the harmful effects of smoking. Smoking dulls the nerves, slows a ninja's reflexes, and can lead to unpredictable consequences. However, after the chaos of the previous night, all he wanted was to numb himself with smoking, to ease the pain and sorrow in his heart. After letting out a long sigh, the third Hokage opened the window and began to review the reports submitted by various departments. These reports detailed the number of buildings destroyed in the village last night, casualty reports, and the economic losses. With a heavy heart, the third Hokage finished reading the reports and sighed inwardly. Since the battle had taken place outside the village, the number of buildings destroyed within the village was relatively low, and there weren't many civilian casualties. In just a few weeks, the village's order could be restored. But what the third Hokage found hard to accept was the loss of 1/5 of the village's elite jonin, as well as the deaths of the fourth Hokage, his wife, and his own wife during last night's chaos. That's right. After a night of searching with no trace of the fourth Hokage and his wife, the third Hokage had came to the conclusion that Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki had died. If losing 1/5 of the jonin was a blow to Hidden Leaf Village, then the loss of the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki was a devastating blow. Minato Namikaze wasn't just any ordinary ninja. Without him, the war with Hidden Stones Village would not have ended so easily, and the war with Hidden Mist Village might still be at a standstill. Though Kushina had not contributed much to the war, her very existence as the Jinchuriki was a significant deterrent. Without Kushina, the mature Jinchuriki, Hidden Leaf Village had lost the means to intimidate with the tail beast bomb in the short term, and the previously calm borders would likely become unstable again. At this moment, the door to the third Hokage's office was suddenly knocked upon, and several figures entered. These individuals were Koharu Udatane, Hamura Minakato, and Denzo Shimura, the leader of Root. Like the third Hokage, these three were part of Hidden Leaf Village's ruling elite, having held power for decades. While the third Hokage had stayed up all night, these three had also taken action on their own. Seeing the troubled expression on the third Hokage's face, Koharu Udatane sighed softly. "Saratobi, I've already taken care of the villagers' resettlement. Haven't you found any trace of Minato or Kushina?" Upon hearing this, the third Hokage shook his head in grief. "I've sent people to search all night, but we still haven't found Minato or Kushina, Not even their bodies. Not even their bodies? Homura Mikado frowned and then said, could it be that the attackers took Minato and Kushina's bodies? But if the attackers took them, why would they leave Naruto, the Night-Tail's Jinchuriki? That's exactly what I'm puzzled about, but that's the reality. The third Hokage showed a helpless expression and continued, unless Minato was hit by the Nine-Tails tailed beast bomb before he could use the Reaper Death Seal. And I don't know why they didn't take Naruto. At this moment, Koharu seemed to have thought of something and said, maybe we should start by analyzing the attackers' motives. They must have had a reason for attacking Hidden Leaf Village. The third Hokage took a puff from his pipe and, while exhaling smoke, analyzed, the attackers didn't take Naruto, which shows they had no interest in the Nine-Tails, nor did they want to completely alter the balance between the five great nations. Perhaps they simply wanted to kill Minato and Kushina. In that case, were the attackers enemies of Minato and Kushina? Koharu displayed a puzzled expression and then said, but when did Minato and Kushina provoke such a powerful ninja? Someone who would go so far as to attack Hidden Leaf Village just to get revenge on the two of them. And if the culprit were a ninja from one of the other four great villages, I have no idea. The third Hokage interrupted with a helpless shrug, but he continued to analyze the situation internally. There were suspicious aspects everywhere during last night's Night-Tails incident, but when combined, they made it difficult to pinpoint a clear direction for investigation. First, according to the Jonin reports from the scene, the ninja who attacked Minato and Kushina possessed space-time abilities. This space-time ninja not only knew the exact time of Kushina's childbirth but also had the ability to control the Nine-Tails. They successfully diverted much of Hidden Leaf Village's forces using the Nine-Tails, giving them the chance to face Minato one-on-one. Secondly, the space-time ninja was not Minato's equal and lost the battle, fleeing in haste. However, after Minato used the Reaper Death Seal to seal the Nine-Tails, sacrificing himself in the process, the space-time ninja took the opportunity to erase all traces of Minato and Kushina. As the third Hokage and his two advisors were deep in analysis, Denzo Shimura, who had remained silent for a long time, finally spoke. Leaning on his cane, Denzo, with a blank expression, said, we can investigate the culprit later. Right now, there's a very important matter we need to deal with. Hearing this, the third Hokage and the two advisors turned their attention to Denzo. Denzo, maintaining his stoic expression, continued, the Land of Fire cannot go a day without a daimyo, and Hidden Leaf Village cannot go a day without a Hokage. Since Minato Namikaze is likely missing or dead, we should quickly choose a new Hokage. If we don't elect the fifth Hokage soon, the village will inevitably fall into chaos. After saying this, Denzo's gaze fell on the third Hokage and the two advisors, his eyes full of anticipation. He was clearly eager to become Hokage himself. Everyone narrowed their eyes at his words. They knew that Denzo had always coveted the position of Hokage, but with the village still in chaos, his eagerness seemed a bit premature. Additionally, it was clear that his root division had played no role in handling the crisis. Homura cleared his throat and said, Denzo does have a point. The village does need a Hokage to manage this chaotic situation. However, Jiraiya and Orochimaru aren't in the village right now, and there doesn't seem to be any particularly suitable candidates. Why don't we? At this point, Homura paused, and Koharu picked up the conversation. Why don't we let Sarutobi act as the interim Hokage? Once the village has returned to order, we can then select the fifth Hokage. Upon hearing this, Denzo's face darkened as he looked toward the third Hokage. The third Hokage stroked his beard, glanced at Denzo, and slowly said, since the village needs me, the former Hokage, to step in, I will temporarily serve as the acting Hokage. Chapter 162, Orochimaru's suspicions. After Koharu Utain and Homura Mikado both recommended Hiruzen Sarutobi as the acting Hokage, Denzo Shimura's expression turned extremely grim. In Denzo's mind, even if he couldn't become the acting Hokage, he had planned to push Orochimaru into the position. That way, even if he lost the race for the fifth Hokage, he could still act as the shadow behind Orochimaru. But to his surprise, Koharu and Homura had instead nominated Hiruzen Sarutobi as acting Hokage. With the majority in favor, Denzo once again lost his chance to become Hokage. Although the title was acting Hokage, in practice, it carried all the powers of the Hokage. No one knew how long Hiruzen would hold this acting position. Would he step down soon, or stay in power until he groomed a suitable puppet? Having been suppressed by Hiruzen for decades, Denzo had no hesitation in viewing his old friend with the utmost cynicism. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Denzo stormed toward the office door, slamming it behind him as he left. Hiruzen, I don't believe you can handle being the acting Hokage. You'll regret this eventually. After Denzo's outburst, Koharu and Homura both turned toward the third Hokage. Looking somewhat embarrassed, Hiruzen explained, I know Denzo opposes me becoming the acting Hokage, but given the current situation in the village, it's simply not suitable to elect a new Hokage right now." The two advisors quickly nodded in agreement and said, "Hiruzen, we understand, and that's exactly why we suggested you as the temporary Hokage. It's just a shame that Denzo doesn't see the reasoning behind it." Hearing this, the third Hokage sighed softly. He knew that Denzo had always wanted to become the Hokage, but having lived in the shadows for so long, Denzo was no longer suited to step into the light, let alone become the Hokage. The Hokage needed to be a figure of positivity and light, someone who could serve as a role model for the village. Denzo might not understand now, but after reflecting, he would surely come to terms with it, just as he had done for many years. This time would be no different. Pulling his scattered thoughts back together, the third Hokage continued discussing work with the two advisors. Whether it was the reconstruction after the Nine Tails rampage or external policies and strategic planning, all of it required careful consideration. The rebuilding efforts would be straightforward. Given the efficiency of ninjas, the destroyed buildings could be rebuilt within a few weeks. As for external policies and strategic planning, they would need to wait for the return of the Sannin before further discussion, though overall, there shouldn't be any major issues. This was the strengthened foundation of Hidden Leaf Village as the top ninja village. Even with the loss of the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, as long as the Sannin remained, Hidden Leaf Village still had the power to stand its ground and wouldn't be an easy target for other villages to divide. At this point, Hamura seemed to remember something and asked the third Hokage, "Hiruzen, with the fourth Hokage now missing, do we still need to carry out the policies he set in place?" Hearing this, Koharu also turned her gaze toward the third Hokage. While they were united in the village's reconstruction and external strategies, the policies Minato had implemented during his time as Hokage were a different matter entirely. Each of them had their own views on those reforms. It was clear that Minato's policies were beneficial to the village's development, breaking down the invisible barriers set by the clans within the various departments and, in doing so, strengthening the overall power of Hidden Leaf Village's ninja forces. However, this also meant that the interests of the major clans would be significantly harmed. During times of peace, the Hokage's office naturally had the power to suppress these clans, but now, with the Hokage's authority weakened, it no longer had an absolute advantage over them. If the clans seized the opportunity to vie for power or even initiated a coup, the village might be able to suppress such a rebellion, but it would undoubtedly fall into chaos and division. So the question was whether to fully stop the reforms or to continue pushing forward aggressively. This required careful thought. After a moment of contemplation, the third Hokage slowly said, "Let's temporarily shelve the policies Minato set up. When the time is right, I will implement them again." Hamura and Koharu exchanged glances. They understood Hiruzen's intentions. By saying the policies were temporarily shelved, what Hiruzen really meant was stopping the fourth Hokage's reforms altogether. As for the right time, it was uncertain when that might be, perhaps years down the line. However, they did not oppose the third Hokage's decision. They themselves had doubts about the fourth Hokage's reforms. While the intention behind the reforms was good, the risks and rewards often go hand in hand. Moreover, currently, more than 2/3 of the Jonin in the village are from ninja clans. Among those who opposed the fourth Hokage's departmental reforms the most, apart from the Uchiha in the police force, were the Sarutobi clan and the members of the Inoshikacho trio. After leaving the Hokage building, Denzo glanced back at the Hokage's office. He knew that Hiruzen Sarutobi would soon return to the Hokage's office and would delay the election for the fifth Hokage as long as possible. Denzo could already picture his future confrontations with Hiruzen, imagining how Sarutobi would counter his arguments with excuses such as, "The daimyo of the Land of Fire does not agree, and there's nothing I can do." It's all about maintaining the relationship between the village and the daimyo. We must focus on the bigger picture. Sarutobi would also claim that the fourth Hokage is missing, not dead. If Minato returns, he would gladly step down. He'd even say that Jiraiya and Tsunade don't want to be Hokage, and that since there's no suitable candidate, he's reluctantly continuing as the acting Hokage. This sneaky old monkey. He never even considered letting me become Hokage, not even for a moment. And all of this wasn't because Denzo lacked strength or merit. It was simply because, during that fateful time when Nobirama-sensei led them in retreat, Denzo hadn't passed the test. If back then, he had acted faster than Hiruzen, it would have been him as the third Hokage. The more Denzo thought about it, the angrier he became. He felt like smashing his cane to the ground, but he had to maintain the image of the leader of Root, and he also needed the cane to support his aging body. He was no longer like Hiruzen Sarutobi, who, even at his age, had fought the Nine Tails last night, still strong and vigorous. After the failed ambush of the Akatsuki, along with Henzo of the Salamander, Denzo increasingly felt the effects of age on his diminishing strength. Although he hated to admit it, he had to. He no longer had the strength to rival Hiruzen Sarutobi. Even facing elite Jonin like the Inoshika trio was becoming a struggle. The only way to restore his declining body functions was one thing: research the cells of Hashirama Senju and perfect the cell transplantation technique. As long as he could gain the power of the first Hokage, Denzo was confident he could defeat Hiruzen Sarutobi and become the new Hokage of the village. With this thought in mind, Denzo quickened his pace and headed toward the outskirts of the village. 20 minutes later, Denzo arrived at the root laboratory hidden in the forest outside the village. He had built this laboratory in secret, without the knowledge of either the third or fourth Hokage. The sole focus of the lab was on perfecting the technology to transplant Hashirama cells and mass-produce wood-style users for the village. Walking through the dark corridor, Denzo soon entered the laboratory's interior. A root guard, upon seeing Denzo, lowered his head and said, "Lord Denzo, Lord Orochimaru returned to the village a few hours ago. Orochimaru's back already? Why didn't he go to see Hiruzen Sarutobi?" Denzo frowned, then found Orochimaru sitting in the lounge. With a sarcastic tone, he said, "Orochimaru, your timing is impeccable. If you had returned just one day earlier, maybe the fourth Hokage and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki wouldn't have died." Orochimaru glanced at Denzo, his expression indifferent as he replied, "I've heard about what happened to Minato and Kushina. Their sacrifices are a considerable loss to the village. However, I also heard that Minato willingly sacrificed himself to seal the Nine-Tails and even defeated the space-time ninja who attacked. Impressive for a ninja who surpassed me, but life is fragile. If I were him, I wouldn't have used such a forbidden jutsu like the Reaper Death Seal." Denzo's face twitched as he started staring at Orochimaru intensely. He hadn't even told Orochimaru about these details concerning the fourth Hokage, yet Orochimaru already knew. Could it be that he had planted spies within his root organization? Sensing Denzo's suspicion, Orochimaru calmly said, "The old man sent people to inform my subordinates. But I have no interest in Minato and Kushina's situation. Let's talk about the wood-style experiment instead." Pausing for a moment, Orochimaru continued, "While I was away, I found several promising test subjects. As long as the funding is in place, we can proceed with the wood-style experiments immediately. I've already prepared the funds." Denzo nodded, then stared at Orochimaru and said, "But the wood-style experiment isn't the most pressing matter right now. There's another important task that needs immediate attention." "What is it?" Orochimaru glanced at Denzo, his tone dismissive. "The election for the fifth Hokage. Since the fourth Hokage is now dead, we need to act quickly to participate in the election for the next Hokage. Only if you become Hokage will you be able to conduct your experiments freely in the village." "Forget it," Orochimaru said, showing little interest, his gaze somewhat amused. "The old man will surely become the acting Hokage. He never intended to let me become Hokage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have recommended Minato in the first place." Seeing Orochimaru's lack of interest in the Hokage position, Denzo's lips twitched. "Orochimaru, have you really given up on the position of Hokage? This isn't the Orochimaru I know. Becoming Hokage was just an attempt in my life. Even if I fail, it doesn't really matter." Orochimaru paused for a moment before continuing, "Besides, we're still conducting the wood-style experiments without being Hokage, right? The fourth Hokage couldn't stop us, and neither can the old man." Faced with Orochimaru's apathetic attitude, Denzo looked disappointed and changed the subject, saying, "I understand how you feel. Once the wood-style experiment is finished, we should halt our collaboration. After all, if we don't become Hokage, conducting these experiments will be too dangerous for you." After speaking, Denzo turned and left the lounge, heading deeper into the passage. Orochimaru losing interest in the position of Hokage meant that Denzo's chances of becoming Hokage through Orochimaru were gone. As a result, Orochimaru had lost his value as an ally. Once the wood-style experiment concluded, it would be time to seek out new allies. Watching Denzo's retreating figure, Orochimaru smirked to himself. He knew that Denzo had always wanted to use him to seize the power of the Hokage, but in truth, he had been using Denzo to fund his experiments. From the very beginning, their relationship had been based solely on mutual interests, not because they were like-minded companions. Once the wood-style experiment was over and he obtained the crucial data, there would be no reason for him to continue cooperating with Denzo. In fact, there wouldn't even be a need to stay in Hidden Leaf Village. Ever since the thought of defecting and establishing his own village crossed his mind, Orochimaru had increasingly come to see the Hokage position as nothing but a burden. Becoming Hokage would not only saddle him with the responsibility of managing the village but also expose him to both overt and covert plots and attacks. The deaths of Minato and Kushina were prime examples. Minato, who had mastered space-time ninjutsu, should have been the ninja most adept at escaping and the hardest to kill. Yet, he ended up sacrificing himself alongside the Nine Tails because he was bound by the village, his wife, and his child. In the ninja world, survival is the most important thing, not lofty ideals or emotions. Clearing his mind of distractions, Orochimaru began seriously examining the events of the Nine Tails attack from the previous day. While he didn't care about the village or the deaths of the fourth Hokage and his wife, he was extremely intrigued by the identity of the masked man and the jutsu he used. First of all, the masked man possessed space-time ninjutsu and could freely enter and exit Hidden Leaf Village's barrier. Secondly, the masked man had the ability to control the Nine Tails, which likely involved some powerful sealing technique or ganjutsu. From what Orochimaru could recall, only the first Hokage, the second Hokage, and Mito Uzumaki, the first Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, had the ability to control the Nine Tails through sealing techniques. As for controlling a tailed beast with ganjutsu, only Madara Uchiha, who earned the title of Shura of the ninja world decades ago, had ever been able to do that. I haven't heard any such title for Madara, but since the author is using it, I will be using it too. But Madara Uchiha had been killed by the first Hokage many years ago. Even if he had faked his death somehow, he would likely have died of old age by now. Could it be that someone from the Uchiha clan had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan? After thinking it over, Orochimaru shook his head. If there really were someone in the Uchiha clan with the Mangekyo Sharingan, their arrogant nature would have driven them to use it already. Besides, the Mangekyo Sharingan was more of a legend than a reality. Whether it even existed was still uncertain. Suddenly, something crossed Orochimaru's mind, and he gazed in the direction outside the village as if his sight had pierced through mountains and rivers to reach a land perpetually shrouded in rain. The Uchiha in the village might not have had the ability to control the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, but that didn't mean someone in Hidden Rain Village couldn't. Although Yahiko and Konan, students of Jiraiya, seemed far from reaching Kage-level strength, the Uzumaki descendant, Nagato, was no ordinary figure. In the past few months, during his investigations into different nations and while selecting a location for his future village, Orochimaru stumbled upon some valuable information. Denzo had conducted an operation in Hidden Rain Village a year ago, which resulted in a loss of most of Root's elite members. Since then, Hanzo of the Salamander has never been seen again. If the Uchiha in the village weren't capable of attacking the fourth Hokage and his wife, could it be the work of someone from Hidden Rain Village? Chapter 163, Reactions from Other Villages. Once the seed of doubt was planted, Orochimaru's thoughts grew like wild grass. The first suspicion he had was regarding the connection between the Akatsuki organization and Hidden Rain Village. According to Yahiko, the current leader of Hidden Rain Village, their village had received the approval of Hanzo of the Salamander, and thus, the high-ranking members of the Akatsuki were being cultivated as his successors. But if this were true, why had Root suffered such significant losses over a year ago? Although Denzo had unrealistic ambitions, he would never deliberately provoke Hanzo of Hidden Rain Village. The operation likely had something to do with the Akatsuki, perhaps even involving a direct confrontation with Yahiko and his comrades. If this speculation was correct, Hidden Rain Village might have a motive to retaliate against Hidden Leaf Village. However, if Hidden Rain Village truly attacked Hidden Leaf Village, they would most likely target Denzo, who had previously attacked the Akatsuki, rather than Minato Namikaze, Yahiko's senior. Yahiko had no reason to kill his fellow disciple, and it's questionable whether he even had the power to do so. Could the culprit be Akatsuki's Byakuya? Orochimaru shifted his suspicions to Byakuya, locking him as the prime suspect. After all, during his encounters with Hidden Rain Village's delegation, Byakuya was the only ninja he couldn't fully comprehend. Not only did Byakuya possess the power to instantly kill large summoned beasts, but he also had secret dealings with Denzo. If Byakuya and Denzo had conspired during the Nine Tails incident, it wasn't impossible for them to have taken out both Minato and Kushina. The critical question, however, was whether Byakuya possessed space-time ninjutsu. As his thoughts began to scatter, Orochimaru was unsure just how much his deductions were valid. Regardless, he had no intention of sharing these hypotheses with the third Hokage or anyone else. For now, all Orochimaru wanted was to complete the wood-style experiment, end his partnership with Denzo, and be ready to leave at any moment. With that in mind, Orochimaru left the lounge and began preparing for the next round of wood-style experiments. The wood-style experiment had been initiated during the Third Great Ninja War as a human experimentation project by the third Hokage, with the goal of cultivating wood-style users by transplanting cells from the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. When the experiment first began, many ninjas who admired the first Hokage eagerly volunteered, hoping that the transplantation of Hashirama cells would allow them to become elite jonin of the village. However, the risks associated with the procedure far exceeded everyone's expectations. After the deaths of countless volunteers, the experiment was eventually deemed a forbidden practice in Hidden Leaf Village. Despite that, Orochimaru and Denzo continued conducting the experiments in secret. Orochimaru sought to unlock the secrets of wood style, while Denzo desired a ninja with the wood style bloodline to serve him. After years of research, the transplantation of Hashirama cells had nearly reached maturity. Once the final human experiment was completed, they would obtain the crucial data needed. Entering the laboratory filled with the scent of disinfectant, Orochimaru's gaze locked onto the subject lying on the operating table. A few days later, news of the Nine Tails incident in Hidden Leaf Village spread across most of the ninja world. Although the Hidden Leaf Village leadership, led by the third Hokage, made every effort to suppress the news, the sheer scale of the event was impossible to hide from the eyes of spies in various villages. The information quickly reached the intelligence agencies of each village and landed on the desks of the 5 Kage. In Hidden Stones Village, the village hidden in the stones, after carefully reviewing the intelligence on the Nine Tails incident, the old face of Anoki, the third Sushi Kage, was all smiles and giggles. If not for his tired back, he would sure give it a try to belly dancing right now. The Nine Tails incident had cost Hidden Leaf Village both the fourth Hokage and its Nine Tails Jinchuriki. For Hidden Stones Village, this was an immensely fortunate turn of events. It was precisely because of the fourth Hokage's existence that Hidden Stones Village had lost the war against Hidden Leaf Village. Anoki had even issued an order at the time, allowing his forces to abandon missions without punishment if they encountered the Yellow Flash. This decree had become an indelible stain on his long reign. Furthermore, due to the fourth Hokage's youth, Anoki had believed that Hidden Leaf Village was on the verge of regaining the glory it once had during the era of the first Hokage, possibly crushing the other villages underfoot. But now, the fourth Hokage was dead, and with him, the Nine Tails Jinchuriki had perished in the incident as well. Having lost 2 Kage-level combatants, Hidden Leaf Village no longer held any advantage over Hidden Stones Village. Anoki even entertained the idea of tearing up the peace treaty and annexing the neutral land of grass, which lay between Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Leaf Village. However, his thoughts were just that, thoughts. With a soft sigh, Anoki abandoned the unrealistic idea, turning his gaze out toward the boundless Gobi Desert outside his window. Though he longed to lead Hidden Stones Village in annexing the plains of the country of grass, the village's current strength no longer permitted such a move. In the last war, the fourth Hokage had wiped out Hidden Stones Village's assault troops in skirmishes, leaving them devastated. Even if they seized the land of grass, Hidden Stones Village would not be able to hold it. In Hidden Stones Village, the idea of rashly tearing up the peace treaty still lingered in Anoki's mind, but he knew doing so would draw dissatisfaction from other villages and the daimyo of various nations, resulting in severe consequences. More importantly, Anoki realized he no longer had strong commanders to send to the front lines. His son, Kitsuchi, though powerful, lacked the ability to change the course of the war and could not shoulder the duties of the Sushi Kage. The villages Jinchuriki, Rashi, the Four Tails, and Han, the Five Tails, while possessing Kage-level strength, disagreed with Anoki's expansionist ambitions. Both were conservative and recently had been wandering the land of Earth under the pretext of guarding the borders. His only hopes now lay with Kurotsuchi, his granddaughter, whose talent exceeded Kitsuchi's, and Deidara, a talented Earth-style user at the Ninja Academy, who might one day inherit the position of Sushi Kage. After regaining control of his wandering thoughts, Anoki ultimately decided against tearing up the peace treaty. In Hidden Sand Village, the village hidden in the sand, after purging internal opposition within the village, Raza solidified his position as the fourth Kazi Kage, fulfilling his initial goal. His motivation for launching a war against Hidden Leaf Village in the first place was to divert internal conflicts within the village. Though Hidden Sand Village was now restricted by both the daimyo and Hidden Leaf Village due to the peace treaty, the loss of many ninjas during the war had paradoxically eased the village's resource crisis. However, despite this, Hidden Sand Village's financial situation remained dire. The village could only barely maintain operations by using Raza's magnet style to mine gold, just enough to pay salaries and prevent further internal strife. Returning to his office after working in the underground mines, Raza glanced at an intelligence scroll. Upon reading the news of the deaths of the fourth Hokage and his wife during the Nine Tails incident, his expression shifted. Though their deaths weakened Hidden Leaf Village, benefiting Hidden Sand Village's future resistance, Raza knew the village still needed the deterrent force of Hidden Leaf Village's presence to fend off invasions from Hidden Mist Village, the village hidden in the mist, and Hidden Stones Village. Suddenly, Raza recalled something and asked his assistant, Does the intelligence collected by the Anbu indicate who caused the Nine Tails incident and killed the fourth Hokage? The assistant shook his head. Lord Raza, we don't know who killed the fourth Hokage yet, but it's said that he died while sealing the Nine Tails. It's likely that the Nine Tails itself killed both him and his wife. At this moment, the assistant also remembered something, and he froze in place. If he wasn't mistaken, the third Kazekage had also mysteriously disappeared, though the difference was that the third Kazekage died after leaving the village, while the fourth Hokage died within his own village. After a moment of silence, Raza's expression darkened, fear creeping in. The deaths of powerful shinobi like the third Kazekage and the fourth Hokage led him to wonder whether he might face a similar assassination in the future. If he were to die, Hidden Sand Village would likely fall to the status of a second-rate ninja village. Raza knew that relying solely on the Jinchuriki Bunpaku, along with the elders Chio and Debizo, would not be enough to support the entire village. He would need to be more cautious when leaving the village, and selecting a new Jinchuriki for the one-tail, Shukaku, had become an urgent matter. Bunpaku was old and nearing death. If Shukaku's seal were to break, Hidden Sand Village lacked the resources to withstand another rampage. Caution would be essential. As for starting another war, Raza had no intention of doing so at all. After some thought, Raza waved his assistant away, then took up the pen and paper handed to him to write a letter to Hidden Leaf Village. In such turbulent times, Hidden Sand Village needed to cling tightly to Hidden Leaf Village's influence. In Hidden Mist Village, the village hidden in the mist, Yagura, the fourth Mizukage, received intelligence about the Nine Tails incident with a grim expression, studying it for a long time. Despite his short stature and babyish face, Yagura's recent victory in the battle for the position of Mizukage proved he was not to be underestimated. Winning the bloody internal conflict that plagued the village, he had established himself as Hidden Mist Village's leader. After carefully reviewing the full report on the Nine Tails incident, Yagura's expression was as dark as Raza's. While Hidden Leaf Village's internal chaos was undoubtedly beneficial to Hidden Mist Village, the Mist Village had recently gone through its own turmoil, no less devastating than the Nine Tails incident. The struggle for the position of Mizukage had turned families against each other in Hidden Mist Village, leading to widespread death and destruction. Yagura himself had only managed to secure his position with the support of his mentor, Genjutsu Hazuki. Once he became Mizukage, Yagura quickly realized how dire Hidden Mist Village's situation truly was. Although the third Mizukage had died while researching ninjutsu, there were plenty of unresolved mysteries during his reign. For one, the third Mizukage was the village's strongest ninja and should not have died so easily. Secondly, Yagura couldn't comprehend some of the bizarre orders the third Mizukage had issued. Why had the village abducted a Hidden Leaf Village ninja to turn her into the Three Tails Jinchuriki and send her back to Hidden Leaf Village to sow chaos? In Hidden Mist Village, Yagura, the fourth Mizukage, found himself deeply troubled after receiving intelligence regarding the Nine Tails incident. He carefully reviewed the information, his unease growing as he reflected on the situation. Though Hidden Leaf Village's internal turmoil was advantageous for Hidden Mist Village, Yagura knew that his village had also experienced similar chaos not long ago. The battle for the position of Mizukage had torn the village apart, with prominent clans killing each other in the bloody conflict. Yagura had only secured his title because of his mentor, Genjutsu Hazuki's backing, becoming the new Mizukage and bringing some stability to the village. However, after taking up the role, Yagura realized how precarious Hidden Mist Village's situation truly was. The mysterious death of the third Mizukage, who had been the village's strongest ninja, raised many questions. Why had such a powerful figure died so easily? And why had he issued so many bizarre orders, including the abduction of a Hidden Leaf Village ninja to make her the Three Tails Jinchuriki, sending her back to Hidden Leaf Village to cause havoc? The more Yagura thought about it, the more he suspected that something was very wrong. Perhaps the third Mizukage had been manipulated, subjected to a genjutsu, or struck by some severe trauma that led to his strange actions. But if someone as powerful as the third Mizukage could be controlled, Yagura feared that he too might be in danger of falling into the same trap. His anxiety deepened as he looked again at the intelligence on the Night Tails incident, sweat forming on his brow. Could it be that a vast conspiracy was enveloping the five great nations? Was this why the third Kazekage had mysteriously disappeared, the third Mizukage had died under strange circumstances, and even the fourth Hokage, who mastered space-time ninjutsu, had died in his own village? As these thoughts raced through his mind, Yagura suddenly sensed something behind him. He turned sharply and saw a swirling vortex appear in the air. Emerging from it was a masked man, wearing a tiger pattern mask. The man's eyes, visible through the mask, were an ominous red, radiating a sense of dread. Yagura instantly recognized the eyes. These were none other than the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan from Hidden Leaf Village. However, the pattern in the eyes was different from the typical three Tomoe Sharingan. Could this be the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan? But that was impossible. The Mangekyo Sharingan was just a myth, and the last known wielder of such power was Madara Uchiha, the shinobi of hell. Yet the man before him exuded the same terrifying aura as the legendary figure. At that moment, Yagura pieced everything together. He understood why the third Mizukage had behaved so erratically, why the third Kazekage had vanished, and why the fourth Hokage had died. Madara Uchiha had never truly died after the Battle of the Valley of the End. Instead, he had been lurking in the shadows, manipulating events from the darkness. Madara had been controlling Hidden Mist Village all along, sowing division and chaos to ensure the village could never unite. And now, Yagura realized, he was the next target. He could feel that Madara intended to make him his puppet, controlling him just as he had the third Mizukage. I won't become a puppet. Yagura thought, his face twisting with resolve. I must resist Madara Uchiha. But as Yagura's emotions surged and his thoughts raced, the masked man, Obito Uchiha, locked eyes with him and activated the Sharingan's Genjutsu. Yagura's movements slowed for just a split second, enough for a pair of black hands to emerge from the ground and grasp his legs, pulling him toward the earth. Taking advantage of the moment, Obito swiftly moved beside Yagura and activated his Kamui, creating a vortex in the air. In an instant, Yagura was sucked into the swirling space and transported into the Kamui dimension. Though Obito possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan, subduing a Kage-level ninja like Yagura was no simple task. Only by trapping him in the Kamui dimension, where there was no water or food, did Obito stand a chance. He could wait for Yagura's strength to deplete, at which point he would use the Sharingan's Genjutsu to take control. The reason Obito sought to control the fourth Mizukage was simple: he wanted to use Hidden Mist Village as a breeding ground for strong subordinates. A peaceful ninja village wouldn't produce the powerful ninjas he needed. Only by keeping Hidden Mist Village in a perpetual state of chaos could he create the warriors he desired. Chapter 164, Behind the Scenes and on stage. Half an hour later, Obito dragged Yagura, the fourth Mizukage, out of the Kamui space. During the past half hour, Obito had assaulted Yagura multiple times using his Mangekyo Sharingan's Kamui. After exhausting Yagura's chakra, he finally cast a Genjutsu with his Sharingan. Though Obito would have preferred to win without such methods, after losing to Byakuya and Minato, he had become far more cautious. There was no need for reckless risks that could lead to unnecessary trouble. Glancing at Yagura behind him, Obito frowned. Although he had successfully placed Yagura under a Genjutsu, the control was temporary. To maintain this hold, he would need to recast the Sharingan Genjutsu every few weeks. While it wasn't difficult, it was certainly bothersome. However, compared to the benefits of controlling Yagura, this inconvenience seemed insignificant. Still, Yagura's behavior would inevitably change under his control. If Yagura's close allies noticed these differences, it could lead to problems for Obito in the future. What could he do to avoid this? Lost in thought, Obito surveyed the room, and his eyes fell upon the Mizukage's desk. Suddenly, an idea formed in his mind. If controlling Yagura posed such a risk, why not take his place as the Mizukage himself? With Obito's abilities, raising strong subordinates in Hidden Mist Village would be a simple task. Plus, this would bring him one step closer to his ultimate goal of becoming Hokage. After all, both the Mizukage and Hokage were the leaders of powerful ninja villages, and in a way, water even countered fire. With this plan in mind, Obito used a transformation jutsu to assume Yagura's appearance and took his seat at the Mizukage's desk, casually picking up the scrolls awaiting Yagura's attention. He opened one of the scrolls, and after just a glance, Obito's brow furrowed. The scroll contained a simple inquiry, asking how the fourth Mizukage intended to deal with the ninja and clans who had lost in the Mizukage election. Obito was silent for a few seconds. These matters were beyond his expertise. How was he supposed to know the proper way to handle election losers? This wasn't something they taught in the Ninja Academy. But then again, those who opposed the fourth Mizukage were clearly his enemies. And enemies should be eliminated entirely. With that thought, Obito manipulated the nearby Yagura to write down a decisive solution. After handling about a third of the tasks on the desk, Obito was already feeling fatigued. He had never imagined that being the leader of a ninja village could be so exhausting, completely different from what he had envisioned. With a sigh, Obito glanced at a scroll containing intelligence on the Ninetales incident. As the mastermind behind the attack, he didn't need the report to know what had happened that day. However, during the interrogation of Yagura, the Mizukage had made several deductions that he should never have known. Yagura had pieced together the idea that Madara Uchiha had been controlling the Mizukage and had instigated the Ninetales attack. In reality, Obito was indeed acting as Madara Uchiha. He had assassinated the third Mizukage, and he had orchestrated the Ninetales incident. But the assassin of the third Kazekage? That, Obito truly had no idea. Then there was the matter of the Three Tails Jinchuriki. Obito's expression darkened. He didn't want to think too deeply about it, as it touched on matters involving someone he greatly respected. Madara had intended for Obito to become Hokage. There was no way he would betray him. Furthermore, when Obito had killed the third Mizukage, there had been no sign of mind control or manipulation. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Yagura's assumptions were nothing more than baseless speculation. As the farthest village from Hidden Leaf Village, Hidden Clouds Village, village hidden by clouds, was the last to receive intelligence on the Nine Tails incident. At this moment, the fourth Raikage was not in his office but at the training grounds, sparring with several taijutsu specialists. The sound of their grunts and roars echoed like thunder as they trained with unrelenting energy. Watching the Raikage's intense enthusiasm, his assistant Mobui could only shake her head in helplessness. Compared to other ninja villages embroiled in schemes and rivalries, Hidden Clouds Village was refreshingly straightforward. Any dissatisfaction was typically resolved on the training grounds. Yet, Mabui found it somewhat exasperating to watch the older men wrestle endlessly. Couldn't the village leaders devote their energy to managing village affairs? Relying solely on her to run Hidden Clouds Village was a daunting task. Still, it was perhaps this lack of cunning that had allowed the village to grow to the scale of the second largest ninja village in recent years, with a faint hint of surpassing Hidden Leaf Village. Activating his lightning-style chakra mode, the fourth Raikage defeated his opponent, a seasoned Jonin, and turned to Mabui, frowning. Mabui, didn't I tell you? If there's nothing urgent, don't come looking for me. Mabui adjusted her glasses and handed him the intelligence report on the Nine Tails incident. Raikage, this is indeed very important. As the fourth Raikage took the report and noted the suspected deaths of the fourth Hokage and his wife, a shadow crossed his face. Seeing this, Mabui asked in confusion, Raikage, isn't it a good thing that the Gold Flash and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki are gone? Why do you look so unhappy? The fourth Raikage sighed. Last time I fought against Minato, we had agreed to battle again once we both became Kage. I didn't expect him to die so inexplicably in such a short time. A strong rival like him. It's a pity to lose. After a pause, his expression sharpened as he gazed toward Hidden Leaf Village. But for our village, this is a tremendous opportunity. You plan to attack the Land of Fire? Mabui was taken aback. With Hidden Leaf Village having signed peace treaties with Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Mist Village, isn't a solo attack too risky? Shaking his head, the fourth Raikage replied, this is the best chance we have. If we pass it up, Hidden Clouds Village will remain confined to this peninsula, forever unable to gain land in the Land of Fire. Mabui hesitated before saying, what about Onoki from Hidden Stones Village? He might strike us again, just like last time. The fourth Raikage waved his hand dismissively and grinned. If we keep worrying about every possible threat, the village will never expand. I believe in my brother Killer Bee, and I trust our comrades. We can't lose. Hearing the fourth Raikage's passionate declaration, the nearby Hidden Clouds Village Jonin grew excited. They had long wanted to expand their territory, seizing lands in the Land of Water and even the Land of Fire. Only by gaining more rewards could the daimyo of the Land of Lightning offer more support. Chapter 165, The Land of Rain. Inside Hidden Rain Village headquarters, the higher-ups gathered. As they looked at Yahiko's serious expression, Konan and Nagato felt an ominous premonition. They sensed that Yahiko had some bad news to share. After a moment of silence, Yahiko turned toward the door and said, it's been a while. Why hasn't Byakuya come yet? Nagato glanced at Yahiko and replied, Byakuya has been at the base outside the village lately. He might still need a few more minutes to arrive. What's the matter that you gathered us here? Yahiko remained silent and unfurled a scroll containing information about the Nine Tails incident. Konan and Nagato stepped forward. As they read that Hidden Leaf Village had experienced the Nine Tails chaos and that Minato and Kushina had gone missing amidst the turmoil, their expressions darkened. After a moment, Konan frowned and asked, Yahiko, what exactly happened in Hidden Leaf Village? Why did the Nine Tails appear? Isn't Minato skilled in the Flying Thunder God technique? How could he also go missing? Yahiko shook his head slightly and said, I don't know the specifics, but it's true that Minato and Kushina are missing. Jiraiya-sensei can confirm that. Sighing lightly, Yahiko reflected on his limited time spent with Minato. Despite the short duration, they shared many similarities in managing the village and their philosophies, and he had already considered Minato a friend. Hearing news of his friend's potential death was painful for him. Konan fell silent, not feeling a strong attachment to Minato but recognizing the connection through their shared mentor, Jiraiya. Moreover, Kushina was one of the last remaining relatives of both Nagato and Byakuya. The deaths of Minato and Kushina would undoubtedly deliver a severe blow to them. Nagato stood frozen, his emotions a jumbled mix. He had finally found some remaining kin, only to lose one due to the Ninetales incident. Was this the fate of the Uzumaki clan? Just then, as the office was engulfed in a somber atmosphere, Byakuya pushed the door open and entered. Seeing the three from Hidden Rain Village looking so downcast, Byakuya frowned. Yahiko, what's happened to the village that has you all looking so grim? It's about Hidden Leaf Village. And Minato and Kushina. Nagato hesitated, unsure whether to tell Byakuya. While Byakuya usually appeared strong, he often displayed moments of vulnerability. Hidden Leaf Village's affairs? Byakuya raised an eyebrow. You mean the Ninetales incident? I just learned about it. Minato and Kushina died in the chaos. You knew already? Yahiko blinked in surprise, his eyes filled with confusion. How did you find out? Did you forget I'm the head of the intelligence department? Why would it be strange? Byakuya shot Yahiko a look before continuing. I also know they died trying to seal the Ninetales. Apparently, that day, Kushina's chakra caused the seal to weaken, allowing the Ninetales to break free and wreak havoc in Hidden Leaf Village. So, to protect the village, the fourth Hokage had no choice but to use the Uzumaki sealing techniques to contain the Ninetales. Hearing this, Nagato asked curiously, Byakuya, are you saying Minato died because he used the dead demon-consuming seal? Then why didn't Hidden Leaf Village inform us? Byakuya sighed. Nagato, you're still too naive. Minato was your mentor, but he wasn't the same for the other Hidden Leaf Village leaders. They're withholding information, claiming the fourth couple is missing rather than dead, to buy themselves some time. While we might not attack Hidden Leaf Village now, other ninja villages might not hold back. Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato fell silent for a few seconds after Byakuya's explanation. Byakuya was right. They could trust Minato because of their bond as mentors and students. But outside that relationship, they were leaders of their respective villages, and not comrades in the same village. They would always hold back during negotiations. With Minato now dead, the new Hokage would certainly be wary of Hidden Rain Village. It was completely normal not to share the real information with them, and Byakuya had done remarkably well to acquire such crucial intel. It seemed that during their last visit to Hidden Leaf Village, Byakuya had planted quite a few seeds. Thinking about this, Yahiko glanced at Byakuya but didn't delve deeper. Without Byakuya's caution, Hidden Rain Village and the Akatsuki organization would have likely faced destruction long ago. Nagato expressed his dissatisfaction, saying, Byakuya, Kushina is dead. We've lost another member of our clan. Byakuya nodded. I know Kushina is gone, but I had already advised her to leave Hidden Leaf Village and move here. She refused. And it wasn't anyone else who killed her, it was the Ninetales inside her. We can't take revenge on the Ninetales. Pausing for a moment, Byakuya pulled out a scroll from his robe and added, moreover, we have information even more important than the Ninetales incident. More important information than the Ninetales incident. Yahiko and the others turned their attention to Byakuya. After taking the scroll, their expressions turned grave. The content was straightforward. Hidden Stone's village was mobilizing troops on the border of the Land of Water and beginning to infiltrate the surrounding smaller nations. Byakuya, is this information true? Is war about to break out again in the ninja world? Byakuya shook his head. I don't know if Hidden Stone's village will start a war, but with such a large-scale troop mobilization, we cannot be caught off guard. Byakuya's reasoning was sound, and Yahiko nodded in agreement. Regardless of whom Hidden Stone's village targeted, Hidden Rain Village needed to be prepared for the possibility of war, preventing the chaos from returning. However, Yahiko was more interested in hearing Byakuya's analysis. Byakuya, who do you think Hidden Stone's village will attack? The Land of Water, the Land of Rice, or possibly us and Hidden Leaf Village? Byakuya pondered for a moment before responding. If Hidden Stone's village makes a move against either the Land of Fire or the Land of Water, Hidden Leaf Village will definitely intervene. Therefore, a conflict between them is inevitable. As for an attack on us or the Land of Rice, that's unlikely unless Hidden Stone's village wants to fight on multiple fronts. Hearing this analysis, Yahiko felt a sense of relief. While he wasn't afraid of war, he didn't want the recently stabilized Land of Rain to plunge back into chaos. However, if Byakuya's predictions were correct and Hidden Stone's village truly attacked Hidden Leaf Village, Hidden Rain Village would need to carefully consider its alliances. Chapter 166, Sasori's new technique from Yahiko's perspective. If Hidden Leaf Village were indeed attacked by Hidden Cloud's village, he would certainly provide assistance and help Hidden Leaf Village with its defense and counterattack. Firstly, this was because one of Hidden Leaf Village's 3 legendary Sannin, Jiraiya, was their teacher. Secondly, the late Minato Namikaze was his close friend, and they shared many common ideals regarding governance. Additionally, Hidden Rain Village needed a strong ally like Hidden Leaf Village to counter any threats. However, the issue lay in the fact that the fourth Hokage was dead, and no one knew who the new Hokage would be. If Jiraiya were to take over, the relationship between Hidden Rain Village and Hidden Leaf Village would naturally be maintained. But if someone else became Hokage, the situation would need to be reconsidered. After all, although Jiraiya from Hidden Leaf Village had mentored the three of them, Denzo Shimura from Hidden Leaf Village had also caused significant damage to the Akatsuki organization. If Byakuya hadn't detected something was wrong early and made preparations, the Akatsuki would have been destroyed long ago. Thinking of this, Yahiko looked at the others and slowly asked, Nagato, Conan, if Hidden Cloud's village does attack Hidden Leaf Village, what do you plan to do? Faced with Yahiko's question, Nagato fell into deep thought. Compared to Yahiko, he had no emotional connection to Hidden Leaf Village and remained indifferent. Although Jiraiya had taught him in the past, it was Hidden Leaf Village as shinobi who killed his parents and attacked the Akatsuki. Especially after learning that Hidden Leaf Village had turned a blind eye when the Land of Whirlpools was destroyed, Nagato's goodwill toward Hidden Leaf Village had dropped to zero. The only attachment he had was to Kushina, another member of the Uzumaki clan. Now that Kushina had also died during the Nine Tails incident, Nagato had no reason to support Hidden Leaf Village. In fact, a thought arose in Nagato's mind which was to stay away from Hidden Leaf Village. If he continued to attach himself to that place, his life might become even more tragic. Everything he had now could be lost. After all, everything he had once possessed had been taken by Hidden Leaf Village. With this in mind, Nagato said expressionlessly, my thought is to remain neutral and not get involved in their war. But whether you choose to support Hidden Leaf Village or Hidden Cloud's village, I won't oppose it. Hearing Nagato's suggestion, Yahiko was slightly surprised. He noticed Nagato's indifference toward Hidden Leaf Village, and this neutral stance, neither supporting nor opposing, was effectively a vote of abstention. However, with Nagato being so cold toward Hidden Leaf Village, Yahiko realized that his idea of helping Hidden Leaf Village might be difficult to carry out. Conan, who had been frowning and thinking for a while, finally revealed her opinion. The Shinobi World War just ended not long ago, and ninjas in our village don't want to fight anymore. If Hidden Cloud's village and Hidden Leaf Village truly go to war, can we invite both sides to meet and try to prevent the outbreak of conflict? If we can truly prevent the war this way, it would also align with the Akatsuki's ideals. Upon hearing this, Yahiko smiled helplessly. If stopping wars were that easy, the Shinobi world would have achieved eternal peace long ago. It seemed that in the future, how Hidden Rain Village would align itself would need to be discussed with Byakuya. After hearing each other's thoughts, Nagato and Conan both turned to look at Byakuya, since he was the leader of the Akatsuki, while Hidden Rain Village was merely a shinobi village under the Akatsuki's control. Byakuya smiled slightly and then said, my thoughts are similar to Nagato's. Even if Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village really go to war, we shouldn't get involved lightly. Once you're stuck in the quagmire of war, it's hard to get out. Hearing this, Yahiko and the others were taken aback and looked doubtful. They hadn't expected Byakuya to truly not intend to intervene in the war, which seemed out of character for him. Noticing their reactions, Byakuya's expression turned a bit odd as he said, did you all think of me as some kind of war maniac? Of course, I wouldn't jump into a war so easily. Yahiko still seemed unconvinced and asked in a surprised tone, really? Byakuya scratched his head and then said, it's not that I won't intervene at all, but it's about choosing the right time. Once Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village have tasted the bitter fruits of war, the village can then step in and reap the benefits. Yahiko and the others returned to their normal expressions. This was the Byakuya they knew. Byakuya's plan was indeed the best option for now. If Hidden Cloud's village wouldn't start the war, Hidden Rain Village could quietly continue its development. If Hidden Cloud's village does launch a war, Hidden Rain Village would have to consider its own interests. What Yahiko and the others didn't know was that Byakuya already had a plan for when the war would break out. He also knew that Hidden Cloud's village would definitely invade the Land of Fire this time. All they had to do was wait for the right moment. After shifting the topic from the Nine Tails incident to the possibility of Hidden Cloud's village launching a war, they ended the discussion. The next topic in the meeting room was about Hidden Rain Village's internal development, trivial matters. After the high-level meeting ended, Byakuya returned to the Akatsuki's base located outside the village. After more than a year of development, the scale of the Akatsuki base had grown to rival Hidden Rain Village, and the organization's numbers had expanded from over 100 members to more than 300. As the numbers grew, Byakuya divided the Akatsuki into two factions, the Outer Circle and the Inner Circle. And, here we go again, the Outer Circle consisted of ordinary shinobi who had previously joined the Akatsuki, most of whom were from Hidden Rain Village. The Inner Circle, however, was made up of rogue ninjas recruited by Byakuya, all of whom had at least the strength of elite jonin. Walking deeper into the base, Byakuya arrived at a hidden room. Inside were two red-haired kunoichi. One lay on a sick bed with disheveled hair, staring blankly at the ceiling as if lost in thought. The other was sitting on a chair, reading a book while occasionally forming sealing jutsu in her hands. Hearing footsteps approaching, the red-haired kunoichi reading the book remained calm, but the disheveled one immediately sat up warily, her eyes fixed on Byakuya as she said, "Byakuya, how long do you plan to imprison me? When will you let me leave?" Byakuya replied calmly, "We'll talk about that when you're healed. If I let you go now, you'll only end up following your husband." The disheveled kunoichi before him was none other than Kushina Uzumaki. After the Nine Tails incident, Byakuya spent a tremendous amount of time and effort, as well as using Akon's blood, to save Kushina's life. Even so, Kushina, having lost much of her vitality, was left severely weakened, with only the strength of a genin remaining. It would likely take several years for her to fully recover. Akon walked over and tried to reason with her. "Sister Kushina, Byakuya is right. In your current condition, even an average jonin could kill you if you leave. It's better to stay here and recover." Reminder, Akon is Karen's mother. I changed her name from Karen to Akon. Kushina glanced at Akon and then said, "Akon, you've been deceived by Byakuya, which is why you're speaking for him." He was clearly near Hidden Leaf Village during the Nine Tails incident, yet he didn't step in to stop the Nine Tails. "Miss Kushina, I had no obligation to deal with the Nine Tails. Besides, how was I supposed to know your husband would use the Reaper Death Seal, such a forbidden technique? You only needed to hold on a bit longer." After a pause, Byakuya continued, "And you're my kin, but Minato isn't. If you want, you can end your life now and join Minato. I won't stop you." Kushina, with her fiery temper, wanted to teach Byakuya a lesson, but her weakened body made it impossible. So she coldly replied, "If you hadn't taken me away, the others in the village would have saved me. If I'd held on until Lady Tsunade returned, I might not have died." At this point, Akon shook her head, showing no hesitation as she said, "Sister Kushina, no offense, but no one else but Byakuya could have saved you. When you were brought here, part of your soul was already damaged. I could heal your body, but only Byakuya could repair your fragmented soul." Hearing this, Kushina fell silent. She knew that Byakuya had indeed saved her life. Given the circumstances at the time, it was likely that the masked man had been lurking nearby, and Byakuya couldn't have risked an ambush. However, what she couldn't understand was why Byakuya, after saving her, would imprison her. As for Byakuya's suggestion to commit suicide for Minato, she had considered it, but that would have been far too selfish. After all, her son Naruto was still in Hidden Leaf Village, serving as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. This was the real reason for her clash with Byakuya. She wanted to leave now and return to Hidden Leaf Village to be with Naruto, to raise him. After a moment of contemplation, Kushina fixed her gaze on Byakuya and asked, "Byakuya, what exactly do you want from me? What do I have to do for you to send me back to Hidden Leaf Village?" Byakuya sighed softly and replied, "I only want you to stay here and heal. Once you're better, I will naturally send you back. This is for your protection. And besides, haven't you thought about the masked man who attacked you before? He might come after you again." Kushina fell into silence, realizing she had almost forgotten about that. In her current state, returning to Hidden Leaf Village wouldn't allow her to protect Naruto. In fact, it could even put him in greater danger. But why had the masked man targeted her in the first place? Isn't Naruto still in danger in Hidden Leaf Village? Byakuya, reading Kushina's thoughts, said, "Miss Kushina, I've had people look into Naruto's situation. It seems the masked man doesn't have plans to target Naruto. Perhaps Hidden Leaf Village has done a good job of keeping things secret, or maybe the masked man is only after the two of you. Although I did consider taking Naruto away, there's always Anbu around him. Hidden Leaf Village wouldn't allow me to take the Night Tails Jinchuriki." Kushina sighed softly. It seemed there was no better solution. As much as she wanted to protect Naruto, the best way to do so might be to stay away from him. In her current state, all she could do was remain hidden in this underground hideout, away from the outside world. At that moment, Byakuya picked up a book from the side and handed it to Kushina, saying, "If there's nothing else, work with Akon to compile a textbook on medical ninjutsu and sealing techniques. I'll bring you updates about Naruto every few months." With that, Byakuya left the room deep inside the base. Akon glanced at Kushina, then at Byakuya in the distance before following him and asking, "Lord Byakuya, why didn't you take Kushina's child back then? And who exactly is the masked man?" "Naruto is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Hidden Leaf Village would never allow it. As for the identity of the masked man, I'm not entirely sure, but he seems to have a connection with Kushina. If his sole goal was to target the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, there's no reason he wouldn't have attacked Naruto again. But for now, Kushina's emotional state is unstable, so I'll need your help with her. I'll take good care of Sister Kushina." Okan nodded before walking away from Byakuya, trusting that he wouldn't harm Kushina, since they were the last of their clan. After Okan left, Byakuya's expression returned to its usual cold indifference. He glanced up at the cold light overhead before resolutely making his way toward the Akatsuki office. Of course, Byakuya knew the true identity of the masked man. He had observed the entire Ninetales incident. If it weren't for the chance to acquire half of the Ninetales, he wouldn't have even wanted to interfere. After all, Hidden Leaf Village's downfall would provide the best opportunity for Akatsuki's growth. Hidden Leaf Village was like the whale of the shinobi world, only when the whale falls can everything else thrive. As for why he saved Kushina Uzumaki, apart from her being a member of the Uzumaki clan, recruiting her might trigger a reward related to the Uzumaki clan. He also had future plans to recruit Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto was the reincarnation of Azura, the prophesied child of Mount Myabaku, and the future savior of the shinobi world. The reasons he didn't allow Kushina to reunite with Naruto, or directly take Naruto away, were twofold. First, he didn't want to attract the attention of Black Zetsu. Second, he didn't want to become an enemy of Hidden Leaf Village. Hidden Leaf Village would never allow the Ninetales Jinchuriki to be taken away. When Byakuya finally reached the Akatsuki office, he saw Hanzo standing at the door, acting as a guard. The former demigod had seemingly grown accustomed to a retired life, now resembling an elderly doorman. Hanzo also noticed Byakuya and smiled, saying, "Byakuya, you're finally back. What did Yahiko and the others have told you? Anything important?" "Nothing much, just some news." "What news?" Hanzo asked curiously. "What could they possibly know that you don't?" Byakuya saw through Hanzo's gossipy intentions and replied calmly, "There was a Ninetales incident in Hidden Leaf Village recently. The fourth Hokage and the Ninetales Jinchuriki both died." "The fourth Hokage and the Ninetales Jinchuriki are dead?" Hanzo was stunned. Although he had been staying near Hidden Rain Village, he was still well informed about the outside world and knew of the fourth Hokage, a master of the Flying Thunder God technique. But how could the fourth Hokage and the Ninetales Jinchuriki die together? The two of them combined could easily destroy a small shinobi village. At that moment, Hanzo seemed to recall something and looked at Byakuya suspiciously. "Byakuya, you didn't have anything to do with the Ninetales incident, did you?" "Don't be ridiculous, it had nothing to do with me." Byakuya quickly denied it, but to Hanzo, it sounded like he was trying to cover something up. Hanzo didn't push the matter further and simply smiled, saying, "Whether it was you or not doesn't matter. By the way, Sasori stopped by earlier. It seems he's looking for you." Chapter 167, The Future of Puppet Jutsu. "Sasori came looking for me earlier?" Byakuya was a bit surprised upon hearing this. Ever since he recruited Sasori into the Akatsuki, Sasori had spent all his time holed up in the organization's lab, devoting himself to the study of puppet jutsu. He had essentially become a shut-in, never leaving the lab, except for requesting meals to be delivered and occasionally applying for more research funds. If not for Byakuya's extensive financial backing and his control over trade guilds in the Land of Rain and neighboring small nations, the Akatsuki's budget alone wouldn't have been enough to sustain Sasori's money-burning puppet research. However, over the past 6 months, Sasori has produced some useful research results on puppet inventions. Though Byakuya didn't see much killing potential in these puppets, they showed great promise when used for construction, production, and transportation. Byakuya eagerly awaited the day when Sasori would create large-scale or remotely operated puppets. Hanzo of the Salamander nodded and said, "It seems he's had a breakthrough in puppet jutsu. But I'm getting too old for this, I can't understand those new-style puppets. Back in the day, I destroyed plenty of puppets myself." Seeing that Hanzo was about to start reminiscing about the past, like mostly old men at his age usually talk, Byakuya quickly interrupted, "Hanzo-sensei, let's leave those old stories aside. You should focus on training new recruits for me." Hanzo, though cut off, wasn't upset. He chuckled, "The elite Anbus you had me train are just about ready. At best, they'll reach Jonin level. No matter how carefully I train them, they won't reach the Kage level you're aiming for. But Sasori is different. He's the grandson of Chio. If you can win him over completely, he'll be a valuable ally in any major undertaking." Byakuya stared at Hanzo for a moment. This old man, who had once led Hidden Rain Village to prominence, was now showing genuine concern for Byakuya's future. Could he have really come to see Byakuya as a disciple? However, as a reincarnator, Byakuya knew all too well the weaknesses of these characters from the story. He didn't need Hanzo to worry about such things. With a chuckle, Byakuya said, "Thank you for the advice, Sensei, but both Sasori and Kakazu are ninjas I personally recruited. I know exactly what they want, and I won't let them leave easily." Hearing this, Hanzo was taken aback and asked, "You know what they want? Care to share?" "Of course." Byakuya nodded slightly, his voice turning contemplative. Sasori lost his parents at a young age and has always lacked familial love. That's why he became obsessed with puppet jutsu. If you show him a little care, he'll submit. On the other hand, Kakazu may love money, but at the core of it, he is afraid of betrayal. After failing to assassinate the first Hokage, his village betrayed him, forcing him to become a rogue ninja. As long as I never abandon him, he'll remain loyal, to both me and money. Hearing Byakuya's analysis of Sasori and Kakazu, the smile on Hanzo's face stiffened. Analyzing someone's past to understand their present personality and weaknesses wasn't difficult for a ninja of Hanzo's stature. But what shocked him was the sheer extent of Byakuya's knowledge. Sasori's past was relatively recent, so it wasn't surprising that Byakuya knew about it. But Kakazu's history was decades old, and back then, Byakuya hadn't even been born. Byakuya, sensing Hanzo's surprise, turned his gaze to the old man and said calmly, "As for you, Hanzo-sensei, what you care about most is Hidden Rain Village in the Land of Rain. As long as I and Yahiko can lead this country to prosperity, you'll never betray us." The smile on Hanzo's face vanished completely, replaced by a resigned expression. Byakuya had seen right through him. However, seeing someone's weaknesses wasn't the hardest thing in the ninja world, it was helping others realize their dreams that posed the greatest challenge. And Byakuya had that ability. But Hanzo couldn't help but wonder about Byakuya's true identity. There was no way Byakuya could just be an ordinary descendant of the Uzumaki clan. Uzumaki ninjas did indeed possess higher chakra reserves than most, but Byakuya's chakra levels were extraordinarily high, beyond reason. Moreover, Uzumaki ninjas didn't have access to wood style, an ability unique to the first Hokage. If someone else had it, they had to be connected to Hidden Leaf Village. Could Byakuya be related to both the Uzumaki clan and Hidden Leaf Village? Could he have even orchestrated the Nine Tails attack on Hidden Leaf Village? By the time Hanzo snapped out of his thoughts, Byakuya had already disappeared. Sensing the lingering chakra in the air, Hanzo sighed quietly and picked up his thermos. There were some things better left unexplored. He wanted to live long enough to see how Byakuya would lead the Land of Rain and what kind of storm he would stir up in the shinobi world. In the forest near the laboratory, Byakuya found Sasori assembling a puppet. Sasori was deeply focused on his work and didn't notice Byakuya's presence until Byakuya deliberately made a noise. Sasori turned around, his eyes complex as he calmly said, "Byakuya, you're here. Didn't you call me here?" Byakuya shrugged and walked over to observe the humanoid battle puppet Sasori was assembling. This puppet was once again a human puppet, its body sourced from a bounty on the black market. Sasori's puppet, despite being constructed from a corpse, had been enhanced with various special metals and adorned with intricate decorations, making it almost indistinguishable from a living human. After observing the human puppet, Byakuya commented, "Not bad, you've made significant progress. Your earlier designs were too terrifying, but this one has more artistic appeal. If it were a bit more stylish, it would be even better. Also, suitable materials for human puppets are still too hard to find. I'd prefer it if you focus on creating more heavy-duty puppets. Nagato keeps complaining about the high breakage rate of the current ones. Heavy-duty puppets lack artistic soul. I'm not particularly fond of them." Sasori replied, his voice emotionless despite still being a flesh-and-blood human. After a brief pause, he added, "By the way, I heard about the Nine Tails Night. You did a great job. How do you know about that?" "I don't recall telling you anything about it." Byakuya frowned. Why was everyone assuming he was behind the Nine Tails incident? "I still have subordinates outside. They informed me. Besides, you mentioned before that Hidden Leaf Village would soon pay a price. So, it's clear the Nine Tails Night is connected to you." Sasori replied, his cold eyes locked on Byakuya. His emotions were far more complicated than his indifferent demeanor suggested. In a way, Hidden Leaf Village was also responsible for his parents' deaths. Byakuya's actions seemed to have avenged him in a sense. Yet, Sasori was also shocked by Byakuya's audacity. Although both Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Sand Village were part of the 5 great shinobi nations, their strength differed greatly. Sasori had barely managed to defeat the 3rd Kazekage through surprise and poison, turning him into a puppet. But Byakuya had stormed into Hidden Leaf Village, killed both the 4th Hokage and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, demonstrating power beyond Sasori's imagination, perhaps enough to call Byakuya the strongest ninja in the world. Byakuya enjoyed the way Sasori was looking at him, but he felt it necessary to clarify. "Don't get me wrong. I wasn't the one who orchestrated the Nine Tails attack. However, the ninja who triggered it is indeed one of our organization's members. When the time is right, I can introduce you to him." "No need," Sasori said, shaking his head slightly, uninterested in meeting the other ninja. In his mind, Even if someone else had caused the Nine Tails attack, Byakuya, as the leader of the Akatsuki, couldn't be completely uninvolved. Perhaps it was even his command. Sasori then continued assembling the human puppet. Once the final pieces were in place, he turned to Byakuya and said, "Leader Byakuya, here is the remote-controlled puppet you asked me to develop. As long as the puppet is within a 100-meter radius of its controller, it can be manipulated remotely." Sasori proceeded to demonstrate the puppet's abilities. After forming hand seals, the human puppet on the ground shakily stood up. Following Sasori's guidance, it began moving across the clearing, attacking the targets scattered on the ground. The human puppet had two primary modes of attack. The first was using hidden shuriken and senbon, needles with pointed ends, stored within its body, and the second was channeling the chakra it contained to perform the ninja techniques it knew in life. With a sharp whoosh, one of the targets was riddled with senbon, resembling a pincushion. The other targets were destroyed by wind and fire techniques, leaving only ashes in their wake. After all the targets were neutralized, Sasori was about to deactivate the puppet, but Byakuya held up a hand to stop him. "Sasori, keep controlling the puppet. This time, I'll be its opponent." Byakuya extended his hand, forming the seal of confrontation with Sasori. "Who would have thought you'd be this childish, Leader Byakuya?" Sasori snorted softly, but he still extended his hand to complete the seal of confrontation. This seal was something only Academy students used, symbolizing that the two were now opponents. In a real battle, enemies wouldn't bother with such formalities, but it held a certain ceremonial significance. Byakuya smiled. "Life needs a little more ceremony. Besides, we're comrades now, not enemies like before." With that, Byakuya instantly moved to the center of the clearing, adopting a combat stance. Sasori didn't suspect anything and immediately directed the human puppet to attack Byakuya. He was also curious to test the puppet's performance, and having Byakuya as a sparring partner was an unexpected bonus. Despite facing the puppet's barrage of senbon, shuriken, and even poison gas, Byakuya handled it all with ease. He didn't counterattack, though, instead focusing on evading and defending, helping Sasori collect data on the puppet's capabilities. A few minutes later, the puppet suddenly stalled midair before crashing to the ground. Byakuya waited for a moment, making sure this wasn't a test of the puppet's camouflage, then approached Sasori. Sasori glanced at the fallen human puppet, his expression serious as he meticulously recorded the data, mumbling, "Whether it's the endurance or the sensitivity of control, the chakra rods are far inferior to chakra strings." Hearing this, Byakuya nodded in agreement. He could clearly sense the limitations of this human puppet. Compared to Sasori's other creations, this puppet barely possessed the strength of a Chunin, which was a disservice to the ninja it had been in life. But this was a known issue. Using chakra rods for remote control had inherent limitations, primarily the speed of chakra transmission. It was akin to the difference between Wi-Fi and a wired connection in Byakuya's previous life. Wi-Fi could never match the speed of a physical cable. However, chakra rods offered one advantage that chakra strings couldn't: they freed the puppet from the restrictions of physical lines, allowing the puppet and puppeteer to function as two independent combat units. At that moment, Byakuya seemed to recall something. As he picked up the fallen puppet, he asked, "Sasori, you weren't using the puppet's own stored chakra to supplement the transmission from the chakra rod, were you?" Sasori nodded. "That's right. I pre-stored chakra in the puppet's body. Without it, relying on the chakra rods alone wouldn't have sustained the level of chakra consumption we just saw." He paused before continuing, "Unlike you and Nagato, I can't create black rods. I can only use these rods infused with chakra-conducting metal to mimic the black rod's functionality. But that introduces new problems. This method can only work with human puppets. Regular puppets can't handle this setup. Even if I pre-store chakra in them, it rapidly depletes once they're disconnected from the main body." Sasori smirked slightly and added, "Of course, I have no qualms about making human puppets, but your subordinates might, and the organization probably can't provide enough bodies for this method either." As he spoke, Sasori was already imagining a scene where he mass-produced thousands of human puppets for the Akatsuki. Even for a puppet fanatic like himself, the thought was a bit unsettling. Byakuya fell into contemplation at Sasori's words. Sasori was right, storing chakra in a human body was vastly different from doing so in a regular puppet. The difficulty levels weren't even comparable. Even someone like Nagato, with the powerful body of a sage, chose 6 corpses for his 6 paths of pain. In the shinobi world, only 2 individuals had the capacity for truly remote chakra transmission. One was the rogue ninja from Hidden Sand Village, Hiroko, and the other was Tonari Otsutsuki. Hiroko relied on the power of the dragon vein, allowing him to control puppets remotely without regard for distance in the ancient kingdom of Uran, which had been built atop the dragon vein. It was a forceful method of supporting puppets. Donorai, on the other hand, was the last of the Otsutsuki on the moon, wielding the power of the Tenseigan. The Tenseigan's power rivaled that of the Rinnegan. Both approaches were extreme. One required conquering the ancient kingdom of Urin, absorbing the Dragon Vein's power, and the other required traveling to the moon to confront the last surviving member of the Otsutsuki clan. If either of these were achievable, mastering remote puppet control would no longer be necessary at all. For now, the only option seemed to be hoping that Seisaori could continue his research, either by developing more efficient transmission techniques or by solving the issue of chakra storage for regular puppets. However, the current technology Seisaori provided was already sufficient for their immediate needs. There was no need to rush. Chapter 168, The Unfair Treatment of the Uchiha Hidden Leaf Village. 2 weeks had passed since the Nine-Tails attack. Although this short time wasn't enough for the villagers and shinobi to fully recover from the trauma, life in the village seemed to have returned to its usual hustle and bustle as if the chaos had never happened. But the cold, engraved names on the memorial stone and the newly reconstructed streets reminded everyone that the era of the fourth Hokage had come to an end. The Hokage, who had been born a commoner, was now completely gone. As for the reappointment of the third Hokage, the villagers and shinobi expressed little opposition. Hiruzen Sarutobi had led the village for decades, and even during the tenure of the fourth Hokage, his influence remained significant. Now, his return to power was simply a continuation of the previous order, with not much changing. However, there were two exceptions to this general contentment, the Uchiha clan and Denzo, leader of the root organization. Though Denzo had known in advance that Hiruzen would remain as interim Hokage for a long time, he grew increasingly furious seeing that Hiruzen still hadn't nominated a successor. He had no choice but to endure Hiruzen's continued rule, but at the same time, Denzo found himself unable to openly campaign for the Hokage position. To run for Hokage, one needed not only significant influence within the village but also the recommendation of elders. Although Denzo had the necessary experience, it was impossible for him to nominate himself. Furthermore, he had already sent people to the daimyo's palace for answers. Unfortunately for him, the daimyo of the Land of Fire had no intention of supporting his bid for Hokage and chose to maintain the status quo by allowing Hiruzen to continue as Hokage. On top of this, Orochimaru, one of Denzo's potential allies, was busy hiding away in his lab, experimenting on wood-style users. Despite the limited success of these experiments, they consumed vast amounts of funds, nearly a fifth of the root's budget. Denzo could only hope that Orochimaru would soon produce results and develop a qualified wood-style ninja. With a light sigh, Denzo, leaning on his cane, pushed open the door to the meeting room. Today's meeting was about the allocation of land to various clans, a discussion that would directly determine where the major clans of Hidden Leaf Village would be located in the future. Looking at the clan heads gathered before him, Denzo silently cursed the third Hokage. Hiruzen never assigned him tasks that boosted morale, but when it came to issues like dividing land, which inevitably offended many, Denzo was always left to deal with it. It seemed as though Hiruzen wanted Denzo to bear the stigma of these decisions, further diminishing his chances of ever becoming Hokage. Despite his complaints, Denzo took his seat at the main table and began to methodically allocate land, using the opportunity to insert some benefits for his own allies. If he was destined to offend some of the clans, he might as well seize the chance to secure as many advantages as possible. First, Denzo distributed land to the Inoshikacho clan, Yamanaka, Nara, and Akimaki, allocating them a prime area close to the Hokage building. If he ever wanted to become Hokage, he would undoubtedly need their support. Next came the smaller clans, like the Inuzuka and Aburame. These clans could be useful allies to Root, so it wasn't unreasonable to allocate them better land. However, to ensure their loyalty, Denzo made sure to retain leverage over them before giving them their plots. By the time the medium and small clans had all received their land, the only remaining clans were the Sarutobi, Hyuga, and Uchiha. Denzo allocated relatively modest land to his own Sarutobi clan, ensuring it wasn't too advantageous but not too inferior either. Then, glancing at the two remaining clan heads, Hayashi Hyuga and Fugaku Uchiha, Denzo spoke slowly, "This area near the bustling district will go to the Hyuga clan. As for the Uchiha, you will remain near the Naka River. That place is your ancestral home, and it will be more convenient for your clan's gatherings." Hearing this allocation, Hayashi had no objections. The Hyuga clan had always maintained a neutral stance and refrained from engaging in the village's political power struggles. While the land they received wasn't in the heart of the village, it was far better than what the Uchiha were given. As for concerns about being isolated by other clans, Hayashi had no such worries. As long as they had the Gentle Fist and Byakugan, Hyuga shinobi would never lack for allies on missions. Their unique abilities were the Hyuga clan's competitive edge. In stark contrast, Fugaku furrowed his brow and couldn't hold back his frustration. Denzo-sama, the Uchiha clan is already located far from the village center. Now you've assigned us even further away to the outskirts. How are we supposed to perform our duties in the Hidden Leaf village police force? Denzo glanced at Fugaku before replying coldly, the Uchiha clan has a large population. If I don't assign you to the outskirts, you will occupy the space of 3 or 4 other clans. I have to consider the interests of everyone here. Can't the Uchiha make a sacrifice? Denzo paused for a moment, then added meaningfully, besides, the police force has always been slow to respond. Whether you're stationed far away or not makes little difference, it's not like you've been effective anyway. His words caused many of the other clan heads to shift their gaze toward Fugaku. Denzo's logic made sense. If the Uchiha were given land in the center, it would force other clans to the outskirts, greatly reducing their influence. Moreover, didn't the Uchiha clan have close ties with the 4th Hokage? Yet, during the Nine-Tails attack, the police force didn't show up to help, and afterward, the Uchiha sustained the fewest casualties of any clan. Not even a single death. It was hard not to suspect that they had abandoned the village in its time of need. Under the weight of so many questioning stares, Fugaku felt an intense pressure. He couldn't explain that the Uchiha had been ordered to stand down. Whether that order had come from the 4th or the 3rd Hokage was now impossible to prove. Without written orders from the Hokage, Fugaku had no way to justify his position or push for better land. For now, he had no choice but to endure and accept the village's decision. Fugaku's face darkened as he cast a cold glance at Denzo, then lowered his proud head. With Fugaku no longer objecting, Denzo swiftly completed the land allocation for all the clans. After the meeting concluded, Denzo deliberately watched Fugaku's departing figure for a few extra moments. He had expected Fugaku to reveal the events of the night of the Nine-Tails attack and challenge him directly. But to Denzo's surprise, Fugaku backed down. Fugaku didn't even dare to mention that Denzo had blocked the Uchiha from leaving their compound that night. Was he afraid of the Hokage's faction, or did he have another plan? The power of the Hokage's faction had greatly diminished, and the Uchiha surely couldn't fear the 3rd Hokage. That left only one possibility: the Uchiha were truly involved in the Nine-Tails incident. If Denzo hadn't led route to block the Uchiha police force, their plan might have succeeded. Denzo felt vindicated in his actions. He believed he had seen further than Saratobi Hiruzen. Without him, the Uchiha would have already seized power. After the high-level meeting, the Uchiha clan held their own assembly at the Naka Shrine. The unfairness of the land allocation and Denzo's remarks had sparked unprecedented anger among the Uchiha. They hadn't remained in their compound during the Nine-Tails attack by choice, it was Denzo who had blocked them. If not for Fugaku's intervention, they might have clashed with the root ninja right then and there. Now that the Nine-Tails incident had ended, Denzo had the audacity to accuse them of failing to assist. It was outrageous. One Uchiha spoke up, "Captain Fugaku, we should protest at the Hokage building and expose everything that happened that day." Another Uchiha quickly interjected, "Protesting at the Hokage building won't help. Denzo wouldn't have faked orders. This has to have been the will of the 3rd Hokage. We need to make sure we become the next Hokage." Many other Uchiha chimed in, "Captain Fugaku, we can't endure this any longer. If we don't take the Hokage seat, the Uchiha will continue to be mistreated." Hearing the outcry from his clan members, Fugaku shook his head and sighed. "Everyone, we don't have the power to run for Hokage right now. Denzo has already used a land allocation to win over the other clans. No matter how strong the Uchiha are, we can't fight the entire village. At least, we suffered few casualties during the Nine-Tails attack. Let them say what they want." Fugaku's calming words slowly eased the tension in the room. Though the Uchiha had been treated unfairly, they had come out of the Nine-Tails incident with their strength intact. In contrast, other clans had lost many of their shinobi, from Jonin to Chunin, with countless casualties. If the Uchiha were to make a move now, it would surely trigger a backlash from the other clans. Those clans wouldn't care about the truth, they only cared that the Uchiha hadn't participated in defending the village during the Nine-Tails attack. Most Uchiha simply wanted to live in peace. Though they held on to the dream of one day becoming Hokage, few were truly willing to start a coup. They were more inclined to vent their frustrations at clan meetings. Seeing this, the more radical members of the clan also tempered their thoughts of rebellion. They weren't foolish, they knew the Uchiha were still outmatched by the rest of the village. Their vocal protests were more about asserting their presence and expressing dissatisfaction. Still, thoughts of that night's Nine-Tails, which had appeared to be under someone's control, left them uneasy. The Nine-Tails movements had been stiff and unnatural, as if it were under the influence of Ganjutsu. Only a few people had the ability to control the Nine Tails with Genjutsu, Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju. But both Madara and Hashirama had been dead for decades. It was impossible for them to have returned at this time. Could it be that there was another Uchiha there? One who had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan and was responsible for the Nine Tails attack? Amidst the crowd, Shizue Uchiha silently observed his clansmen's arguments. This wasn't the first time he had witnessed such debates at a clan meeting. The Uchiha were always torn between whether to pursue the Hokage position or simply complain about the unfair treatment from the Hokage's office and other clans. Shizue was all too familiar with this. He had long understood how slim the Uchiha's chances of becoming Hokage were. More than 30 years ago, Madara Uchiha, one of Hidden Leaf Village's founders, had failed and turned into a traitor to the village, a name now forbidden to mention among the Uchiha. Then, about 20 years ago, Shizue's grandfather, Kagami Uchiha, had served as a trusted aide to the second Hokage, and even had a chance to run for Hokage. But he had died on a secret mission before that could happen. A year ago, Captain Fugaku had also intended to run for Hokage, but he hadn't even been able to secure a nomination. Each failure pushed the Uchiha further from the Hokage seat and farther from the village. If things continued this way, it seemed inevitable that the Uchiha would eventually attack the Hokage's office. Unfortunately, Shizue had been on a mission outside the village during the Nine Tails attack. If he had been there, he might have been able to use the incident as an opportunity to bridge the gap between the Uchiha and the villagers, perhaps even saving the fourth Hokage. With a soft sigh, Shizue quietly left the Naka shrine. After leaving the shrine, Shizue wandered aimlessly for a while. Weighed down by his complex emotions, he eventually found himself in a small grove, where he heard the sound of kunai slicing through the air. A faint smile crossed his face. Entering the grove, Shizue spotted Itachi Uchiha training in a clearing. Itachi noticed Shizue's presence and put away the kunai in his hand, smiling as he said, "Shizue, you're here. If you're not busy, would you mind sparring with me?" Shizue picked up a kunai from the ground and nodded gently. After forming the seal of confrontation, the two quickly disappeared from where they stood, engaging in a purely taijutsu battle. The air was filled with the sounds of their bodies clashing. As Shizue blocked a horizontal kick from Itachi, something occurred to him, and he asked, "Itachi, isn't today a school day? How come you're sneaking out of class?" Itachi, his face expressionless, responded, "School is too boring. I've already mastered everything, whether it's the academic subjects or physical training. Even the senior students can't beat me, so I don't see any reason to stay." Shizue frowned slightly and said, "I understand that the academy can be dull, but if you don't attend, you won't be able to officially graduate and become a ninja. It's fine. I use the shadow clone jutsu. The academy teachers are only Chunin level, they can't tell the difference between me and the shadow clone." Itachi replied absent-mindedly, his focus entirely on attacking Shizue. Hearing this, Shizue nodded, understanding. "If you're using shadow clone jutsu, that's not a problem. Let's continue training. Practical experience is much more valuable than theory anyway." Within just a few exchanges, Itachi and Shizue had finished their sparring practice. As they sat on the ground, drinking water and resting, Shizue suddenly remembered something and asked, "By the way, Itachi, what's your dream?" "My dream?" Itachi was briefly stunned, then replied, "I suppose it's to resolve the conflict between the clan and the village, to bring about everlasting peace in the world. Maybe only by becoming Hokage could I achieve that." He paused for a moment before adding, "But whether it's my father or you, Shizue, your chances of becoming Hokage are much higher than mine." Shizue was taken aback by Itachi's answer. Before asking the question, Shizue had already assumed what Itachi's response would be. Given Itachi's extraordinary talent, it was only natural for him to dream of becoming Hokage. But hearing Itachi's actual dream left Shizue momentarily stunned, as it reminded him of something Byakuya had once told him: if Uchiha's dream is to become Hokage, then destruction is only a matter of time. Back then, Shizue hadn't believed it. But now, he was starting to feel uncertain. Chapter 169, The Cloud of War. The more Shizue thought about it, the more ominous Byakuya's words seemed. The phrase, "if Uchiha's dream is to become Hokage, then destruction is only a matter of time," weighed on his heart like some kind of fate, making it hard to breathe. Reflecting on the clan's history of striving for power, he realized the tragic pattern. Madara once desired the position of Hokage but ended up as a rogue ninja, dying at the hands of the first Hokage.